Guys, intro time.
Wait, which intro?
The wisdom check.
Oh, good.
Wait, no. I thought we were keeping the old intro. What's wrong with the old one? People like that one.
It was too long.
Yeah.
Too many fucking gifs.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can we keep the part where I yell, more?
No.
But it's the intro to end all intros.
I got, 2 lines last time?
Do you want more lines, Tim?
Well, no, not really.
In a world without answers.
Yeah.
Wait, you want to start with that?
Here we go. Exactly like last time.
Wait, okay, so we're doing the exact same way? Let's start with the Smoky Bar.
No, it's a new season. We have to have a new intro.
More.
Not sure why we thought this would go any differently.
Oh, well. Welcome, everyone, to the Wisdom Check, where Jeff and Dustin welcome a guest every week to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome.
This is ridiculous. I'm starting the stream now.
Wait, where's my die at? Well, we can't start until I botch. And it's not an intro unless I'm botching.
You're on.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Wisdom Check. I am Jeff. Across the way is Dustin.
Hello, everybody.
And we are planning to be speaking with Luke Gygax tonight, and hopefully that will still be happening soon. He is from the LA area, and he is part of the military, so we suspect he may be doing some heroes work out there, putting out some fires, and may have put him off the schedule a little bit today. So Dustin and I are going to hang out with you tonight for a little while. We're going to come up with some topics here, and hopefully, we'll get some word from Luke here soon. And if he does, we'll take a quick break and patch him in. It's going to be awesome. So, Dustin.
Yes.
What would you like to talk about?
I was taking a look at our list of topics that we always have on hand, and one that was brought up the other day was about giving your campaign a unique feel outside the rules.
A unique feel outside of the rules.
So I thought that would be a good one. That's kind of a nice broad topic for us to dig into a little bit before we get going, about how you can create some mood and setting outside of just the mechanical rules itself.
So I guess let's set some tent poles. Like, what is it we're talking about? Are we talking about the tone of a game? Or are we talking about adding in some, I don't know, extra flair of some sort, like using? Well, I don't know.
I think that, for us as streamers, we have a few extra tools at hand that if you're sitting at a table, you don't necessarily always have. And I think there's ways you can duplicate some of those things. I know we talked about, with horror campaigns, using candlelight, dark rooms, ambient music, things like that. Like that sort of stuff you can add to. And we do that sometimes as well in our stream games. Cameron makes music for Everstorm, and I think that is, added to it as well. And the music, that I use for Huttenberg. We have things like that we can do, but there's a lot of other things just story and plot wise that you can do that add a certain amount of aesthetic feel to making your world seem like a world. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe that's kind of where the question that was posed by Crazy Ike
nice
comes from. So
yeah, I think a lot of that's going to come down to what you evoke, right? So what are the descriptive words that you tend to rely on? What are the kind of the structure of your the archetypes of the NPCs you like to use and how they present the world to the players. So I think ultimately that's where the meat of a setting comes from, is what the NPCs do around the characters to kind of inform them of their environment.
Yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Mm-hmm. When I did Terror and Treefell, for instance, I knew pretty well that if I wanted to reflect small town America, that I had to create NPCs that seemed as though they come from small town America. Mm-hmm.
And boy, did they ever.
and the second group now running through it without me even saying anything brought that up exactly. Within 3 game sessions of telling this story a second time, they were like, hey, this is... they started to tackle the mystery problem from the stance of, okay, we're dealing clearly with like rural America here. Like, and they picked up on it without me having to say anything. So like, I think that creating NPCs, like, because you can't just go too over the top with them. If you want to nail that setting, like, I couldn't do like preacher style, like, Hilljacks. Like, if I went that level, it loses its feel. If you want it to seem more just like small rural America and not like completely the sticks, then you know, you have to. I think you're right. How you build those NPCs and how you portray them is the difference between getting, I don't know whatever the guy's name is that with a from Preacher. I can't think of the names of any of the
just blanking on it straight out.
Yeah, I'm just blanking on it completely. But you know, there's a difference between like getting them or getting people that seem like people that you might run into, you know, in our hometown, like my hometown near Paris or something.
Somehow still unbelievable NPCs, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we got a lot of chatter going on tonight, so that's great. I appreciate that. Jesse Custer, that's the main character, right? Joker.
Yeah, I believe that is correct. But that's not the one I was referring to, but...
Yeah, see...
it's thinking of like Assface and a couple of the others that are like, you know, completely...
Quill Deity, appreciate that compliment there. You're saying you'll have single or double-handedly elevated your game. That's excellent. I'd love to hear that. That's fantastic.
A small part of me wants to believe that Quill Deity is the reason for 85 downloads on Spotify today.
Could be. That was an interesting one.
He just downloaded the whole series in one fell swoop.
which, by the way, if I failed to mention this a lot, but we are on all the podcast areas. So if you are wanting to catch up on things, you want to watch it on the go, and you don't want to watch it on YouTube, it's out there. And apparently it's a hit as of today. Yeah, we're getting a lot of stuff here as well from Crazy Guy kind of clarifying the question. So he's saying he thinks certain games have a stigma to a specific setting. So, you know, 5e will be pretty high fantasy. You know, World of Darkness is going to be dark, politically driving. Joker's saying it kind of depends on the game session. But each of the games has kind of their own angle they're kind of pushing you towards. So yeah,
so
I guess
outside the rules, how do you do that? Is that what he's saying, or is he saying that how do you defy what the rules would normally make that game supposed to be? Like, if you want to do 5e that's not high fantasy, how do you defy the rules? Is that what he said? Like, what would you do to change that?
Maybe, but I think maybe just what you expect when you pick up a game. You know, like we've talked about, you know, what kind of stories you tell with different game systems.
Sure.
And how that kind of alters things quite a bit for us. Like, I think it's doable to play things like Vampire the Masquerade as non-political, but you're missing out on kind of a core component of the setting when you do that. Or the same thing with Werewolf. If you took out the idea of focusing on rage and, you know, raging against the dying light kind of stuff, you kind of miss out on a component that's there. With D&D, if you're not going high fantasy, it fights you the whole way. So, yeah, I guess now I would have to say that you got to pick the right game for your system. But if you're not doing that, I would say the trick would be really working your descriptions and your NPCs to make them behave in a way that reflects the setting you're trying to set up. So, like, say, for instance, Curse of Strahd kind of stuff, right? Like, if you're in Ravenloft, you shouldn't have really upbeat and excitable people, right? Let's see, Crazy X. Yeah, it was more discussion-based, not a question with a hard answer. Okay.
Okay.
Fill in the blanks.
I just making sure we understood the question fully, and then from there we can discuss this for quite a while, I think. So.
Yeah. Let's see. Airlaser actually redeemed a wisdom check question that's kind of in the same vein here, so let's see if we can work on that. How would you set a game in, say, a World of Darkness game like Vampire over, say, a D&D game in Shadowfell? Both are dark settings, but different games, and make it feel different. How do you set different era, say the 90s?
Okay, there's kind of a couple questions in there. First, how do you set a game in, say, the World of Darkness game like Vampire over, say, a D&D game like Shadowfell? Would you say why would you pick one over the other if we wanted to run a game, or are you trying to say use Vampire and use Shadowfell rules? I guess I'm trying to make sure I understand the question.
The way I'm reading it kind of comes across as, why would you pick one over the other? Like, what would feel different between those two?
Again, for me, anytime I'm talking about the difference between D&D versus World of Darkness or most other systems, it's about lethality and danger.
Yeah.
Both are dark, right? But the darkness you're going to get, there's a difference. See, like you can make D&D a place where you walk into something scary, and the scary is all role play based. The World of Darkness, you're, as the player, are the one who is creating the horror, not the DM. Like that's, to me, that is the stark difference between what World of Darkness does and what Curse of Strahd is. Curse of Strahd is a brand of heroes who wander into a horrible situation where the GM or DM in this case is almost 100% responsible for the horror in the game. Versus a game where, like World of Darkness, where a GM does not have to work towards the horror of the game that hard, because the point of the game is for the monsters who are the players to create that horror themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a buy-in component to something like the World of Darkness, where the players are, like you said, kind of injecting the darkness. And some of their behaviors will just automatically create that kind of tone. I do think, though, that there is a different quality to the darkness between World of Darkness and the Shadowfell, right? Like, Shadowfell is more kind of bleached out, kind of dreary, morose, dark in like an elemental fashion, you know, like a shadowy, dark place. Whereas the World of Darkness is more like, it has some of those same themes, but it's more corruption. You know, it's more decay, I would say. And, you know, moral decay, physical decay, you know, those sorts of concepts. But yeah, I do think that a lot of it comes down to the lethality and the fear of consequences. You know, in in a fantasy setting, yeah, you're dealing with dark concepts. There's a shadow beast over there. There's things that are afraid of light, that kind of stuff. But it doesn't really come across the same way to me. Like, it feels very different. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Like, it's hard. I think it's tough with 5e to. It's all buy-in. At the end of the day, the answer is going to be buy-in from players. If you have players who just don't care what happens to their character, you can't make the World of Darkness scary to them either.
That's very true.
You can't. If you just want to run in there guns ablazing, and I think as you called it last week, the swordening. If you're going to play the swordening, you're not going to be scared in D&D. You're not going to be scared in the World of Darkness. Like it all starts with your GM and player buy-in to what the setting is supposed to be. Once you have achieved that basic hurdle, then you start getting into, well, what do these mechanics, what do these things do for you? Now, if you're talking about trying to defy those in a non-mechanic form, you start to move right back into buy-in again. Because if you don't have the buy-in, it doesn't matter if you set up candles and put on spooky music. You're that person at the movie theater who just doesn't get scared at the scary movie and intentionally defies it for whatever reason. Like you're just not. It's going to break that immersion. There's no way.
I totally agree. And Joker is saying something that I think is kind of resonating with what we're saying here, is that D&D is more combat good, while Vampire the Masquerade is more personal, and combat is rare. And I think that's true. That the flavor of darkness in a D&D game tends towards, I fight the bad guy who is dark, or I'm an edgy, dark guy who is fighting other dark things. Whereas in Vampire, it's almost always, I am dark, I need to deal with my inner demons kind of stuff. And I think that is a different flavor of dark.
I think a key component difference is that when you're in the World of Darkness, because you're a monster of some sort, you're fighting other monsters. And oftentimes, the only thing that separates you from the other monsters is some thin veil of ideology.
Yeah, little tiny,
a very thin veil of ideology difference between the Camarilla and the Sabbat. And at some point, if you're doing it correctly, in my opinion, you're sitting down and you're saying, well, what's the difference between me and the gangrel I just slayed? Is
couple days.
is it really just a matter of literally what political party we're in at this point? Like that's literally what you're talking about is essentially two vampire political parties, which one you belong to, right? Like at the end of the day, that's what vampires are fighting each other over is very thinly veiled ideology. Whereas at D&D, I don't think anybody gets done slaying the beholder and is like, man, I wonder what the difference between me and the beholder is. Am I just as bad as the beholder? Like nobody's saying that. Like it's because you're not a monster usually. And even if you are someone who's a little more of a monster, like a Bowron, like, Bowron doesn't get done, slaying a bunch of verbals and be like, yeah, I'm just like them. I can't believe I did that. Oh man. Like there's not a lot of inner reflection, I guess, in D&D, like the same way. Like I think maybe that's where something like Curse of Strahd actually works.
Okay.
When you play that campaign, there are some points where, because spoiler alert out there, if you ain't played Curse of Strahd yet, he's a vampire.
He's a vampire.
Whereas, when you see his story play out and when you learn about his story, like it can reflect a little more because he was once more like you and now he's not. And you're kind of find yourself going through the motions of kind of going down that path a little bit. So like you do get it a little bit with something that's 5e there, but that's a rare thing. I don't know. It's not limited to Ravenloft, but dealing with things that, like the undead and some of those other things, you can find little ways to drive some of that back home, but it's a little tougher to do.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, we've beaten the alignment system to death at this point, but I think there is some of that playing into it as well. I think when somebody picks their alignment at character gen, that just becomes what they do, as opposed to a discussion of who they are that's ongoing. Where I think vampire in particular is a continuous spectrum of what is my morality at any given time. So like you were saying, like there is no reflection after you kill the verbal, right? Because that's just what Ballroom does, right? Ballroom's not going to change on that kind of element. And realistically, the denizens of a D&D game tend towards, certain alignments. And so it makes it pretty black and white. And I think it's a game design thing. Yeah,
and I mean, I think there's probably some truth to that. So I think that's a fair statement. You just don't see it. I don't know if it's because in high fantasy you don't fight your mirrors a lot.
True.
And it's something that I know when I run 5e games or any D&D game, whether it was 3.5 Pathfinder, I used more mirrors for a lot of my stuff. I don't use monsters out of the monsters manual very often. When I ran my Crusades game, you guys were fighting other essentially people. And I think that's always something that I have incorporated into my games, even when I play a D&D game. So that's kind of maybe something that's just a personal thing I do. Like in Zweihander, you guys are mostly fighting other people. There's been a few cases where it's not true, but you're for the most part fighting other people. So I don't know. Maybe that's just a game design element that I do in a lot of my games. But
yeah, we'll get back to that here in a second because Joker has asked the same question twice with Wisdom Check, and I was going to get to it, but got to it already. So he was asking a question about a Conan-style game. So he's got a kind of controversial question, he says. I am considering running Conan by Modiphius. So is it okay to embrace the fantasy stupid or not? Aka bikini armor, stupid amounts of violence, something straight out of Franzetta cover, 80s power metal album. Or do you think players would get too tired of something like that? So should we fight certain stereotypes, tropes, depending on the game, or should we embrace them? I think if you're doing Conan or a Conan style game, like a sword and fantasy, that is what sword and fantasy is, right? Heavy metal magazine, Conan, that's what that is. So like if you got a group of players that are buying into that style, I think you got to lean into it. Otherwise, just play something else.
I think there's two questions. First, I have to ask you, Joker, are you doing this on stream? Second, I have to ask you is are you playing with a regular group of players or are these going to be some randoms? Because I think if you know your players well enough, you know what they will and won't tolerate, and you'll know for how long they're willing to tolerate it. So if it gets too slapsticky, if it gets too over the top, I find that those things typically, those are bright flames, but they burn quickly. So if you're planning a long campaign, the more over the top you get, whether it's for comedy or for action or for anything else, like those beats will die out quickly in any kind of a game like that. So, it's, to me, a matter of knowing your players and what kind of campaign you're running.
Yeah.
And that's a good session 0 usually resolves a lot of that.
Yeah, and it's the common advice for us, the session 0, getting all the tone figured out. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with the sword and sorcery kind of ridiculousness, right? Like, if everyone's on board with it, it is straight power fantasy, so you got to know what you're getting into when you get into one of those things. And it's a stylistic, tropey thing. Like, I feel like you got to go into the tropes if you're going to mess with that, personally.
I do too. I mean, when they put the video game out, like, it made a bit of an uproar just because the Amazon is topless.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things that are naked in that.
Well, yes, but I'm just saying, like, that was like the first thing I remember seeing when the Conan MMO came out, was that there was people screenshot like, "What? My character's topless?" Like, because they leaned into that trope and they leaned into that idea. So, like, it's not out of bounds in my opinion, but you do have to know who your audience is, and you do have to know who your players are. Like I said, in the first question, if you're streaming, know who your audience is going to be.
Yeah, like, I would advise probably not do it on stream.
I'm just saying maybe not. It's up to you though, Joker. It's your stream.
Yeah, it's a little, I don't know. I mean, there are some elements that are a little old fashioned and ways that they view.
Well, those were games in the 80s or movies in the 80s, so
70s, 80s. Yeah, so it's going to have a
80s,
very different set of culture to it, I guess we'll say. The level of maturity in it's pretty low. Mature themes may be very high, but they're not dealt with maturely in those sorts of things. So you got to be careful with that stuff on a stream. But yeah, if you're just doing it at your table, you got people who are going to enjoy it. Knock yourself out. I don't see.
Yeah, he says he's not going to stream it, so that'd be my advice. And then if you know your players well enough, you're at your table with your players. If you know that they're into that, like, lean heavy into it. If it's something that'll die out in a couple of games and that you won't enjoy doing it or they won't enjoy doing it, then if you want a longer campaign and you want to see, you have a story that you want to tell and you don't want that stuff to get in the way of it, then I would say tone it down or avoid it altogether and just play it straight.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to have kind of a comic vibe to it anyway, right? Like, you're not going to tell you can tell a serious story, I guess. Like, in theory, Conan, the movies could be serious, but they came across kind of fun and silly a lot of the times, right? And maybe that's just because, like, I'm looking back on it now as an adult, but to me, I never took those movies seriously. Now,
to answer the other half of Air Laser's question from earlier, how would you make something feel like it was like in the 80s or 90s? Like, if you're going to go era-based, to me, it's about understanding slang.
Yeah.
It's about understanding technology. Because those two things really define your era. So you had to understand kind of the culture of that time. So, like, if you were going to tell a story, even if you were going to use like World of Darkness, for instance, and you want to have a young group of anarch vampires or something, like in the 80s, they would have to go hang out at the arcade.
Yeah.
Like, because that was like the roller rink, right? The mall. Like, those things were big in that time era. In the 90s, it was still the mall, like, was the place to go, right? Like, nowadays, like, nobody goes to the mall. Like, so
right.
Understanding, what people did when they didn't have cell phones. Like, you watch something like Stranger Things and you can pinpoint when Stranger Things happens because the kids couldn't call each other on the phone hardly. They had to, they were tethered to the wall with it when they were on it, or otherwise they were riding their bikes across town to find each other, because that was how you found your friends back then. You rode around house to house till you found each other. That was what you did. Like, so, I think those are the things that help. And then, understanding like fashion and stuff, you want to describe things, but
yeah, I think there's a lot of that because the attitude was in the clothes, what
absolutely.
The vibe of everything was, and like Joker's making a point here of, looking at the 80s horror movies of the era. Yeah, I think you can get a lot of things. Stranger Things just freaking nailed it. Like,
yeah, they did such a great job.
I don't know what exactly happened with that show that hit it on so many levels for me, but like 2 seconds of watching the show, I'm like, this is that era exactly. Like,
they captured the spirit of the Goonies. That's what they did. They nailed the Goonies. Which is a classic 80s movie already. I mean, they picked that up and they nailed that. And that's what, and then to a degree in the first, there was a little bit of the slasher films from the 80s. There was a little bit of the kind of monster movie from the 80s kind of vibe,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think, there are some things like, the DARE program, the Joker's talking about in there, understanding the change from like, recession era to Reaganomics kind of stuff, and that like sudden flip to yuppies and like, I don't know.
Well, at the Cold War and all the conspiracy and all everything being the Russians. That was the 80s was like the only time period where if there was a villain in a movie, it was Russian. It wasn't the Germans for a while. It was the Russians. Like everything was the Russians for like a decade. And then we went back to blaming Germany again for everything. So it's just that one era. That was it. And then after that, it's like back to being the Germans again.
So like, I do think it is a good idea. Just kind of go back to your source material, do some reading, figure it out, really watch films in that setting. Like they're going to be stylized, but you get some ideas of the setting. That's true of really any setting though, right? So like if you look at like Victorian era stuff, you can get the books. So like Vampire used to have Victorian era supplements that you can get, and they do a pretty good job. But watch other things like Pride and Prejudice or something. Kind of get that style to pick up on those vibes a little bit. Or if you're doing like a Dark Ages thing, just go pop in some movies, watch a few things, see how they did it, and just get a notepad and just write down what you notice. Don't watch it necessarily for the movie itself, but just write down what you see that stands out or what feels like it's that setting. And, get like 5 or 6 things, and then you can lean into those in your descriptions and the way you're structuring your game, and it should come out pretty quickly.
Yeah, if nothing else, it'll give you watch Clueless, you watch some of those things, and you can just base an NPC off of the main character from Clueless. Like it doesn't have to be spot on, but like then you get about 4 or 5 different kind of cliche NPCs to help build that world around, because most games revolve around about 5 to 6 NPCs total. Like that's who your party deals with 95% of the time, and then everything else is usually impromptu people that you have to make up on the fly. So yeah, it's just this is just an example. But there's just a bunch of different. You could just go and find just a few different movies that have kind of an iconic character in them, and just watch those, and then you're good to go for that era. And once you understand things like the tech, you're not having people pop out their cell phones in the middle of the 80s to try to call each other to do something like I said. Then that's where you get to go with it. So
yeah, and it's kind of fascinating looking back a little bit, because the 90s weren't that long ago. I guess it is. It's 30 years at this point.
It's 30 years ago at this point, Jeff.
I know, but you think of just how stark the difference is between then and now, with social media and like Twitch and everyone having a podcast under the sun and all that kind of stuff. Like I can't fathom being a kid growing up with all this stuff now. Like,
well, I got 3 kids. I can tell you what it's like for them growing up with all this stuff. They don't do much anything else. Like that's the difference. Like I was discussing this the other day with a coworker. I'm like, I have to ground my kid outside. Trust me, there are other parents in the chat right now who will understand when I say this. I can't ground my kids to the room. They're already there. I have to ground them out of their room to something else. Like,
yeah, that's true. Like, yeah, you kind of look back at what we were doing back then, because it was just boring as hell in the house, So like, you were lucky if you had like some kind of video game. system or something, but you only had like 3 games or something. That's all you had to do. So that didn't last very long. And of course, you only had one TV in the house, so at some point you got to give it up. And then you're right. It's get on your bikes, go find some people, because everyone's just wandering around aimlessly out in the roads.
the video games were different then too.
Yep.
You get together with your friends after you found them and rode around each other's houses till you finally tracked each other down. And then you'd be like, let's get a game. And you'd be like, that's cool. Then you had to ride uptown with about $4 in your pocket to go rent a game from a Blockbuster or something, and then ride all the way back home with it and then play video games for the day. And that's just a level of effort that modern kids don't ever have to deal with. So,
yeah, back in our day, boredom was real. Man, we faced the grim boredom. Boy, it was rough. Both ways. Uphill, downhill. Oh, we got over here. Kids on brooms, kids on bikes, little fears, grim. Yeah.
I mean, I can't think of any modern kid adventure stories that are set in a modern time. I was trying to think if there are any when I saw Joker's comment. I couldn't come up with any off the top of my head.
Man, that's a good point.
Because you could almost redo Hackers. You know what I mean? If you thought about something like that, where only in the 80s the hackers were on roller skates and they had to go meet in dark, dingy alleys to with a laptop to pass around or something, right? And now it's they all have them at home. They just never actually meet in person. So
Hack the Planet indeed with those stupid.
That's right.
It's so terrible. I love that movie as a kid, but that is a terrible movie.
It is a terrible movie, but I'm saying even that is a bit of that is not a bad source movie though for if you wanted to try to nail that era, because that was the tech that shows you the tech they had.
Speaking of which, Joker sings "Serial Killer," which was a line from there, and an individual in it. That's Matthew Lillard. He is a gamer. He plays a shitload of games. I ran into him at the last what was it, Gamehole Con, and yeah.
That's awesome.
So it's a small world of gaming around there. I'm trying to think of it, but I think some of it is that we're not in the age group that is primed to look for teenage targeted movies. And I think actually some movies I don't know, Twilight, obviously it's got fantasy elements and stuff like that, but I think that's kind of aimed at that kind of age group. This is the life that they kind of have.
Twilight's not a bad option.
Mm-hmm.
Because the only other movie I can think of that had a group of kids was Harry Potter.
Yeah,
but even then, magic was supplementing anything technology you would have wanted for. So I don't even feel like Harry Potter feels like it's set in the modern time because
it doesn't.
It feels because of the magic. So it's
it's also not typical of North American life. So there's 2 components there that are feeling not like the era to an American.
Yeah, no, so that's what I'm saying. It's hard to do with those things, but you're right. I think if you're going to have kid adventures, if you're going to do kids on bikes, if you're going to do Stranger Things, there's a reason that those get put into those eras, just the 80s or 90s even.
Well, I mean, because what would one of those stories look like now, right? It'd be kid goes out of the house, gets reported as runaway. Or abducted 20 minutes after they're out of the house. Parents get locked up for child endangerment because their kid was walking around the block.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying. They would never actually leave the house until probably the third act of the movie. Yep. Something would finally force them out of their parents' basements, right?
And that would be the nuking of their house,
or something, yeah.
So I guess that is a whole consideration that's just radically different. It's when you watch stuff like Stranger Things, or you reflect back on our childhood, right? You think about how often we were just out unsupervised doing whatever nonsense we were up to, and that was the norm. You couldn't tell a Goonies story in the modern era. It just wouldn't be possible. But back then, Jumanji, that's not a bad choice there.
Yeah, the new Jumanji. That's actually not
that's
bad.
A really good one. Yeah.
But again, the only reason it worked is because they sucked them into a completely
fantasy
false
world,
environment, into a fantasy world. It's the Harry Potter equivalent, right? You're in our world for a minute, and then you're in this other fake world that's a jungle that does not correlate to anything that seems modern.
Yeah, so I guess back to our original topic of how do you set a setting up outside of the framework of the game. I mean, we're kind of touching on it pretty heavily here. You know,
I think for the era question, we've kind of nailed how you maybe go about doing some of that. Like, I can speak specifically for my 2 games that I'm running for Zweihander. Now, again, a lot of this comes from, it comes from the source material.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm looking at, and this is an art thing, but when I'm looking at the art in Mangaush for what character classes look like, what the professions look like, when I'm looking at, when I see, there's knights and there's these sorts of things, and when I flip back into part of the book, and I see that it's got the equipment has black powder, weapons and things of that sort. Like, when I see all of that stuff, as the GM who's going to write an adventure, or at least build a world which the adventure is going to kind of take place in, because I think it's safe to say you guys are writing more of the story now than I am.
Things got off the rails pretty quick, didn't they?
Yeah, pretty quick. But I think it's safe to say that, like, when I see those things in my head, I don't have a campaign book to read from for Zweihander, but I do have sets of rules that tell me a little bit about how the world should work. And the rest of it, I have the art to dictate, like, what kind of world do these images seem like they all come from?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
so the rules are the physics.
That feeds a lot back into what you design and what actual items exist. And you can say, oh, this, not what the rules are, but just that these kinds of items exist tell me that it's this kind of world.
Yeah. Well, and I think that gets back to the idea that the rules are the physics of the world. And then, as you're describing, the artwork is, the skin and the framework around which you can hang everything else. And yeah, it is a lot more evocative when you have images. Hey, Grouch Couch.
Hey, Grouch Couch.
I'm looking at the new V5 Vampire book, and, like, you look at a cover like that, and you instantly have ideas of what's going to happen, or, the feeling of a game, right? Like, it's just different than if you see a hero on the cover with a sword and board, throwing down. So, like, I do think that you're right. I think that the artwork has an outsized influence on what the game is going to feel like, too.
I think it inspires you when you go to write something. And I think this is maybe a little difference between being a homebrew and being someone running from a module. Because I think both the artwork still affects you in both, but with a module, you're getting told kind of what, and if it's a module that's based in a campaign setting, you're getting all that information from other sources being told to you. This is what the world is. This is what's in the world. This is what the attitude is. When you're trying to build your own, I think then you get inspired by what art and what other stuff you consume, and then regurgitate that back into your game world. And I think that's where a lot of it's going to come from.
Joker is hating on V5.
I know, I see that.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I think... I'm trying to think of, like, another game that really just punches out there with a style. Well, like a setting, like Dark Sun. Like, that is so evocative when you see those images. Obviously it harkens back to some of the sword and sorcery stuff, but
to me, when I read it, it's Dune.
Yep. Well,
I see Dune. When I see it, I'm like, oh yeah, Dune. It's sand. It's, to me, it comes out initially with the artwork of it's Dune.
Man, boy, that you saw the
I saw the trailer in theaters.
Did you
because
really?
It was played before New Mutants, and it was awesome.
Wow, that was a pretty good trailer. Like,
yeah.
I was like, man, I don't know. Could be awesome. Could be good. And then we'll have to wait and see. We'll see if they actually launch it out there in the theaters or not. They did some really cool stuff in there. Yeah, Malice is correct. We are hopeful that it is a quick fix, and here soon will be to learning of a need to go on break and bring in a third person. But right now, it's just the two of us you're stuck with, and we'll kind of go from there. Let's see. What is Quail Deity saying here? Let's see. That is a fantastic name of a game there. So Quill DD saying he found a game system called Hot Gay Dragon Bros. Wants to buy it just for the name. Oh man, that's amazing.
There's some amazingly fun TTRPG systems out there. Like, you know, like we've talked about, our friend the Lich, he runs like Trash Pandas. Or it's got Crash Pandas where they have to, they have to, the raccoons have to drive a car. Like, you know, there's a bunch of them out there that are kind of maybe quirky and slapsticky, and you can find some really fun ones out there if you look hard enough. So absolutely.
So you might catch me looking down at my phone here occasionally. I'm just trying to check to see if we have any updates. But yeah, so that's a good question though about the, you know, how do you set the setting and tone against the book there, and what they're kind of laying out. Yeah, that is a bonkers thing to have found, Quill DD. Joker saying he's got another one called Kobolds Ate My Baby. It's ridiculous. I mean, sometimes that's all it takes. Just something quick and quirky, like you said, with the Crash Pandas. You know, it doesn't have to be a long game. Just could be like a party game kind of thing, and you're good to go. You know.
Yep. And it doesn't even matter what the rules are. Like the moment you hear, you know, one of those styles of games, like you immediately jump to like, this is just going to be quirky fun. Like there was one I know I watched on Scraticus where it was literally like Mario Kart, the TTRPG. They were literally in racing karts. It was like Speed Racer in a way. It was like everyone was racing, but they were like fighting it out while racing.
Nice. Grouch Couch is asking us about what our opinions are on choose your own adventure games. Now, is that like a DM-less card game, like where you pull the deck and then it gives you a scenario and then you play it out?
Yeah, I think those are kind of neat. Maybe they help scratch that itch if you don't have a game coming up soon. You just want to play in a game.
It's a curious idea because I guess this is kind of harkening back to some other board games I haven't played. Like, what was that one that's like House on Haunted Hill or something like that? I think it's a cool concept because I think it creates a sense of improv that may be necessary to get somebody to the point where they learn that skill set. You know, like the first few times you run into a game where you're put on deck to make up a reason for why this thing makes sense. I think that really helps bridge that gap between just player to somebody who may step up and run a game at some point. You know,
to be honest, I think that he's talking about like diceless systems like Amber. Like, I think that, you know, there's a lot of really good systems that are completely diceless. You know, the dice are really just if you would, the gold standard for arbitrating success and fail. Yeah, that's really what they're there for. So if you come up with other ways of arbitrarily deciding, or if the rules are based in a way that kind of help you declare what happens, you don't need necessarily dice.
Yeah, but I do think, I don't know, like I think I'm on the same page as Joker. Like I have played Amber before, and the way it played, at least at that table, was if the person running your game just thought that you should be able to do it X, Y, or Z, you did. And if they thought you shouldn't, you didn't. And that was the end of it, which I find pretty unsatisfying. Like I like that small amount of chance. I don't. We've gone into a lot of discussions where we talked about how I don't like large amounts of randomness, but I do think some amount of randomness is necessary. Otherwise, it feels like you're just kids playing cops and robbers out in the yard, and that gets a little nonsensical to me. That's not a. It doesn't feel like a game in a tabletop role playing sense or a board game sense. It feels more like just make believe.
Sometimes, perhaps, like and it's a different world, but like I can remember several sessions at like LARP where I never threw one single chopper roll to die for anything. Like it was just pure session of politicking and role playing. Mm-hmm. Like. Now, we had those systems there if we needed them for something, but for the most part, things were arbitrated without needing them.
Yeah, sure.
So you could do a lot of fun things with that. So then you say, like, well, what does really constitute a good game session? Well, you don't have to have a whole lot of systems to do a lot of that stuff to have a good game session. If you can have a good game session without it, you could have 3 or 4 good game sessions without it. You could have a whole tabletop role-playing game where there's other ways of arbitrating things that don't require it. So, I mean, it's possible. It's just, I think they're rare. I think most people like dice. I think knowing whether something's going to work or not and the odds of it going in, I think there's a certain appeal to that. And I personally like to be able to fail.
Yeah. So I like this one that they were describing in the chat here, talking about Jenga Tower. That it was a horror game. So like you draw out the Jenga tiles to determine if you succeed or fail. And so I like that is a specific case of a game decision, like a game design element that creates a mood. Like, because if you play Jenga, for anyone who doesn't know what Jenga is, it's a tower of wooden rectangular blocks that are laid out, and you have to remove one of them, put it on the top, and so that each person takes turns doing that. And so the idea is the tower gets really unstable, and then at some point it'll topple over because somebody's just unable to be careful. And I think for a horror game, that's a great thing. Like, because that creates tension and dread. Like, oh, I know I'm next. I got to hope this goes right.
Yeah. I like I said, I guess at the end of the day, the question is are you there to do cooperative storytelling or are you there to roll dice? You can do both. Both can happen. But I would say that it's very possible that if you're there and your whole point of your session or your campaign is to tell a story, dice rolls become very minimal. I think for the most part, you get through most of your sessions and nobody's really touching their dice that much. Dice typically come up when the player characters either come into contact and there's mystery and they don't know what they're dealing with. So you get a bunch of investigation, perception style rolls. Or when things go to blows and we have to have combat come into play. Sure. You can't just narrate combat. You could, but it's usually not very satisfying to just narrate combat and be like, well, that was it. You chop the heads off of these 5 things and now let's move on to the next scene. Like, I don't think that typically goes over that well most of the time.
I think you're nailing it there. Is like, I mean, this is something that Malice and I often say is that you can role play any system. I mean, the role play component doesn't really get made or broken by a rule system, but it's where you fall outside of pure role play. What happens then? That's where these diceless systems lose me. Like, he does this more than anyone else that I know of, but the Liching Hour, who's playing board games right now, if I look over there as I see, I watched him do a session of 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. Solo, diceless. It was amazingly fun to see how that whole story got built with a completely diceless system. Now he's doing it solo, he was doing it with stream. So, I mean, he was doing it on stream and he was talking with the people watching, but it was fascinating to see a completely diceless system and to see the story that got told from it. Like, it was actually kind of cool and a lot of fun. So, but it is a lot of improv. It's an incredible amount of improv. So, well, and I mean, it's an age-old thing, right? Is telling stories. Whether it's a ghost story around the campfire or whatever, and that's just fun in and of itself. But to me, tabletop role-playing games are that plus something else. And so, like for me, and this is just a personal opinion, but for me, any system that doesn't have a rule set or a very, very light rule set is missing a big chunk of what makes a game session fun to me. Whereas I could definitely get behind those scenes where, the sessions where we just do nothing but role playing. Those are great. Or scenes where, you're just clever and you figure out what to do and you're making interesting decisions. I like those. But I also think that there's times where, conflict occurs or things are in doubt. And I think at those times you want some kind of system that handles that.
I think that, I think for me, when I think back to my favorite sessions and when I think back to my favorite moments and when I think back to my favorite characters, I almost never remember the actual mechanical dice parts of the game. I remember the story. I remember what happened. And with the exception of a few things where, like, when we talk about the time Clint as TO 2020 auto killed the main boss. Like, with the exception of a few crazy rolls, like, I don't remember any actual combat rolls that I made with probably 90% of my characters. I remember the story beats. I remember what the story was, and I remember sometimes even the silly ideas we had to try to take care of a situation, even though I don't remember any of the dice rolls that actually took care of it. I just remember that this was the thought process of getting to this conclusion. And so for me, like, those are the important parts. So, like, if that's what I remember 10 years later, and the part that I remember I enjoy the most about gaming, like, as long as that component's in a game, I'm not sure I miss the rest of it that much at the end of the day.
Yeah, but if you think about those story beats, right, you start to talk about maybe times somebody epically failed. Like, you came up with a good idea, but it got screwed up and it put you in a weird spot, so then you had to do something else, right?
Right.
That happened because of a system. Like, the dice...
Sometimes, yes.
The dice screwed you over, and now you have to figure it out. Or,
right. No, and I said, sometimes if you have, like, a really epic shot or a really critical fail, you'll remember the ones and you'll remember the 20s.
Yep.
Yeah, don't remember almost anything in between.
Yeah, well, and I think that's an example of just, like, how the rules... They come in when they need to be there. They do what they're supposed to do, and then the rest of the game happens around them, right? And you know, it's pretty good, and I think that's really where you should live, you know, in terms of how much rules you should have. You know, like, if you can get in and out of a system, have a good time doing it, and then still get your fun out of it in the roleplay sense, then you're good to go. Joker redeemed another question for us. I feel like we kind of touched on this, but how do you guys feel about GM-less, DM-less tabletop role-playing games such as Fiasco as a collaborative, creative type of game? Yeah, I don't know. I think they're interesting. I don't think we've really sat down and done one, so I don't have first-hand experience doing it, but the concept of it is interesting to me. I feel like it's something a lot of our games tend to do anyway. Especially when we refer back to Larp. I think a lot of Larp was in that nature. Where it was,
that's what I was going to say. To me, it would feel like a small table LARP session, which is cool. And even the DM-less session, even those DM-less like things, though, there's still rule sets. They have card decks, dice, things that narrate what the DM's part would be. So you still have things you're reacting to and you're dealing with. You just don't have one particular person who's in charge of running the entire game. So in those situations, again, it's collaborative storytelling. It is effectively, it's a more advanced version of popcorn that you used to do in elementary school, where one tells like 2 lines of a sentence and passes it to someone else. So, you know, to me, like those, at the end of the day, you still get a story. Now, how good your story is may have a lot to do with who the people are sitting at your table. Yeah. You know?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, but at the same time, you get what that group was trying to do as a whole, right?
Right.
You know, like every group has different tendencies from different individuals within that group, and they're going to bring their own spice. So, you know, when you get into something like this where it's collaborative, you know, it's an interesting exercise, I think. Again, you know, kind of going back to what we were saying before, I think it is improv, you know, kind of distilled down, right? So like that is what you're doing. And I think it's just good exercise, you know.
I think these things, I think most of these kinds of things have one shot written all over them. Like, I don't know if I see like extended long DM-less campaigns or extended long diceless campaigns. Like,
yeah,
I think 1 to 2 shots on a lot of them probably is the most you'll probably get.
Yeah, because I think there are certain things that become difficult to pull off, right? So like in that kind of format, it would be hard to do, say, a mystery.
Yeah.
You know, like
Fiasco is supposed to be a one-shot, right, Joker?
Yeah. So like, you know, how would you do a mystery when somebody's going to decide what the answer is? You know, like how do you have fun participating in its mystery? You know?
I think it's like playing the game Clue. Clue's a mystery. You had random cards. You put them in an envelope. You don't know which ones are which until you start revealing other cards. So like there's dice because you move around on the board, but Clue is otherwise diceless. So if you don't have to move around based on a number of squares because you're playing it as an RPG, you've effectively set a mystery where you then unravel it based on uncovering new cards inside of rooms until you figure out who the killer is. Like,
yeah, but from the sense of, as a player, do I feel like I am figuring something out versus I folded over a card and it told me what was happening, right? Like,
well, right.
That's the disconnect, right?
Well, what I'm saying is, though, is you can make characters, take a clue board, go room to room, knowing that you're going to get a card in each room, and there's only so many rooms, so you only get so many cards. And then as a group, sit there, look at the cards you've uncovered, and see if you can figure out who was in the envelope based just on those.
Right.
So, I mean, there's a way you could do it without dice. It's just, it's tougher to do, and I still feel like it's all in one shot.
Yeah. So we got some good news, guys. I just looked down at my phone, and I see that someone has joined our Discord. So I think it's time for us to go back to the countdown screen.
I think it is.
To get Luke Gygax back on the horn, and we'll be here. We will get your question about how we feel about one-shots aimed TTRPGs versus campaign stuff.
One-shots are fantastic. I don't have a problem with them. That's your answer, Quill DD.
I am not a real fan of them, but I can see why other people are.
We'll be right back with our guest.
Absolutely. So I will see you soon. We're going to be on the countdown stream. I don't know how long it's going to take. Shouldn't take terribly long, though. So
it won't be 10 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll guarantee you that.
All right. See you soon, guys. All right. So we are back, guys, and we are joined by Luke Gygax. He's here with us. Thank you so very much for carving out that time. We appreciate it. And for those of you guys who may be too young to know, this is a very important individual. He's obviously been a very important part of the gaming world, not only, as a relationship to his dad, Gary Gygax, who obviously came up with the hobby that we're all involved with, but you also put on a pretty impressive convention, from what I understand, and are out there really pushing tabletop role-playing games all over the place and making it cool. So we much appreciate you coming.
Be here. Thank you guys for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to hang out and talk to you guys.
Absolutely. So this year, obviously, we've been kind of dealing with a COVID situation. I was actually going to make my first appearance at a GaryCon. I was really looking forward to it. Obviously, it didn't happen, but for a lot of people, I'm not sure if everyone has been to a GaryCon. If you have in the chat, make sure you let us know. But I think one of the big things I would be interested in knowing is just, what the focus is for GaryCon. Like what is it that really is the main draw for people, and why they should go to that one as opposed to a different con? GaryCon is a unique convention because it's run by my family, and it grew out of a sad event, but it's become really a wonderful gathering of family and friends and our extended gamer family, where we get together in March in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin every year. And you may say, Luke, why in the world would you be in Wisconsin in March of all times? I mean, maybe in the summertime or the fall, it's beautiful, but March, it's kind of unpredictable. A lot of gray slush sometimes. Sometimes it's 70 degrees. Sometimes it's 8 degrees. You don't know what you're getting. Well, it grew out of my father's funeral. He passed away March 4th of 2008. And of course, we all came back to Lake Geneva, our home, and had a funeral there. The outpouring of, I didn't really realize the impact father had on the world at large, other than the gaming world. I understood that Dungeons and Dragons was a really cool, pivotal game, the role-playing gaming genre. He was responsible for creating that, and that was really neat. But I was thinking, I thought of it in those terms, as opposed to its influence on popular culture, its impact on individuals who play it, and the way it has shaped their lives and helped them. Well, people started writing to me and other family members and expressing their sense of loss. And many of them had never met my father, but he had played a pivotal role through Dungeons and Dragons. And certainly there is a large population of people that my father interacted with directly. He was prolific all the way back in the pen and paper days, where he would write letters or type out newsletters and things like that and mail them out.
But with the advent of the internet and forums, he was in contact with hundreds of people and was very generous with his time because he enjoyed talking to other gamers and bullshitting with people, right? I mean, that's kind of what he was doing through those forum sites.
Absolutely.
So many people just expressed how awesome it was, and they drove from all over the country to Lake Geneva to, make an appearance or to pay their respects. Mm-hmm. And we had a private funeral ceremony, but I thought it would be a good idea for those people who were whom it meant so much for them to just jump in their car and take off a couple of days of work and drive to Lake Geneva. I thought it would be appropriate for us to welcome them in some kind of a wake or a gathering where they could watch the D&D cartoon, watch the Futurama episode, say something about what my father meant to them, and play games. And that's exactly what we did. And my brothers and sisters and other folks, brought some food. There was a bar. We held at the American Legion, which is the site of many cool little conventions from when I was a kid, including Autumn Revel, which there'll be. We'll
talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So that was in my mind when we did that, and the day is pretty much a blur. If I'm being honest with you, that's if any of you have lost a parent, you'll understand. It was. It was all kind of a blur. I had to give a eulogy and do all these things. But at the end of our wake or our gathering there, I believe it was Harold who said to me, "This was pretty fun, Luke. Do it again next year." And Jolly Blackbird, who's the inventor of the oh my gosh, come on, somebody help me out. The comic book that he does.
It's the curse of streaming. This happens to Dustin and I all the time. It's happening to me right now along with you. You just get on a tangent. And you just
dinner table. Yeah, Knights of the Dinner Table is the comic book.
Oh,
so
yes,
he created Knights of the Dinner Table. Yeah,
thank you, Chad.
Knights of the Dinner Table, and he said you can call it Gary Con. And at that time, I didn't realize that Gary Con is essentially their cartoon or comic version of Gen Con, based on Gary Jackson, who's emerged, who's a kind of a combination of my dad, Gary Gygax, and Steve Jackson, another old school designer. Yes. Right. So, Hard 8 Games, Gary Jackson. And so they had Gary Con. They use Gary Con all one word. I use Gary Con with a space in between the Gary and Con. So that's the difference. But it was fully with Dave Kenzer, and Jolly Blackbird's permission that I did Gary Con. And so the next year, I held a convention at the American Legion Hall, and I didn't charge any money. I just figured I was throwing a game day, and I had no idea who would show up, and 175 people came. I had no idea. And I figured I'd spend, I'll spend $1,000 or whatever it is every year, and I'll just throw a party to remember my dad. People were like, no, you can't do that. In fact, the Kenzer guys brought a van full of, that they had, and they said, sell this stuff, basically collect donations to cover your costs. And then people started doing things like, hey, let's have an auction. So at 5:00, we all stopped and stood up on a chair, and people brought stuff to auction, and I auctioned it, and I ended up with, I think, $400 more than I spent at that game. And I was like, well, I can't keep this money. That's inappropriate. So what am I going to do? I said, well, I guess I have to form a company, and we'll make it, we'll make a Gary Con of company, and we'll start doing it. And that's what we did. So we went up to 240 people the next year, and 400 and 500, and just kept on getting bigger until Gary Con 11, which was the last one we held physically, was 2,800 people.
Man.
So it was quite low. And just to give you an idea, if you're in Los Angeles or New York, 2,800 people, you're like, boy, that's nothing. Lake Geneva town of 5,500 people, and it is an hour and a half away from any airport. So if you're coming to Gary Con, you want to be at Gary Con. This is not something that you can easily get to. It's not like you're going to fly into Vegas and you're right there. So it is a pilgrimage. You're making homage there, but many people, many industry luminaries come to Gary Con simply because it's a good time, and it's like a family reunion. With people have told me it's like a family reunion with the family you chose. It's your gaming family, and it has that vibe, and it's personal. It's not a big. If you've been to fan cons and things like that, it can be impersonal. It can feel rushed. You're standing in line for things. That's not the intent. I want it to be intimate, warm, an environment where you feel like you're amongst friends, and that's I think that has permeated and continues, even though we're as large as almost 3,000 people, and that's about the biggest I think we can manage at the facility we're at.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating to hear you saying that that's a goal, is to stay in that intimate, small level. Because, like, I have been to a lot of these conventions, like Gen Con or Dragon Con, where it's just this massive zoo of people and all there for the same hobby and everything. But you're right, it does have a distinct feel to it when you're in a room with people that you recognize. It's like the gamer store that you have in your town. It's something you can come back next year and you see the same people and you go, hey, how's it been going? Catch up, maybe that one time out of the year. And it's a beautiful thing. I've heard so many people that we've talked to here on the Wisdom Check actually talk about how Gary Con is their absolute favorite of all the cons that they go to. And it sounds like one I'm definitely going to have to check out next year when it's going, right? Hopefully.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's exactly that. For the most part, for the first several years, I was able to recognize pretty much everybody there, and I would ask about them. I've seen families grow up, like 9 years old, and now they're in college, and so they're married, and this sort of thing. And it's cool. I've seen kids who came in and they're just kind of just learning about gaming and not really figuring out to going. A couple years later, they're running their first all kids adventure, and now they're running games routinely, and they're grown up. It's like that, and I mean, we're at Gary Con 1, and that's been a while.
Yeah,
but they're my friends. They're my friends. I mean, it was just a couple hundred people that were there, or less than 200 people who were at the first one, and I didn't know some of them at all, but I got to know them quite. And many have come every single year. They become close friends, and in fact, staff that helps with Gary Con. And it's really about 6 people that run Gary Con. So it's a labor of love.
It's a lot of work.
We try to pour. It's a ton. It is a ton of work. I'm a glutton. I don't know why. I signed up for this, but the reason is, I really wanted to promote my dad. I didn't want him to be forgotten, and I think every person, everyone, your dad is your hero when you're a kid, right? I mean, just as a, I think that's, in sort of that dream. My dad was my best friend. We spent a lot of time together, and I loved him dearly, and I didn't want him to be forgotten. And I kind of thought that his accomplishments and his contributions to the world were in danger of being forgotten. And so I at least wanted to have Gary Con to keep his memory alive. And certainly there's been a great resurgence of D&D, and it's become popular again. Absolutely. And that's really cool. And I wish he was here to see that. So as I've done this and more people have talked to me, and I've done more interviews and talked to more people and seen books and, Playing at the World or Michael Whitworth's, Empire of Imagination, I realize, or just speaking to game design, computer designers, writers, authors, or here, this person was a gamer or whatever it is. I realized the impact that my father had throughout the world, and he really is someone who could be, who I feel, and I don't think I'm being crazy when I say this. He could be considered in the league of a Steve Jobs or someone of that caliber for the impact he's made. Yeah. But we all know Steve Jobs, right? But if you go and talk to a group of people, not a lot of people know who Gary Gygax is, and that's been a long time goal of mine, is to get him that recognition for what he, fair recognition for the contributions that he made during his lifetime.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that when I started picking up Dungeons and Dragons, and I'd pick up those old advanced second ed books, there was his name right there on the cover. Gary Gygax. You sit there, look at it, like, oh yeah, look, there's, and you would figure out who that person was. I think a lot of people coming in with 5th edition, if they sit in the hobby long enough, they start to hear about where the hobby came from, and then your dad's name gets brought up and they learn about it through that process. And through that process, then do you find that attendance at Gary Cons is starting to escalate up higher and higher because of the resurgence of 5th Ed and everyone getting drawn into the hobby?
I think it's wonderful. First thing, I think they did a great job with 5th edition. It's written well for today's player. I enjoy playing it. My daughters enjoy playing it. I still play 1st edition. I mean, if I'm going to choose a game, it's going to be either 1st edition or 5th edition. That's kind of where I'm going to be at.
Go to the polls.
yeah, 1st edition or 5th edition. That's it. Now, I do not disparage any edition because it's a game.
Right.
If you're having fun playing a game, that's what brings your group together, and that's how you enjoy it. God bless you. That's exactly what you should be doing. And it's a game. Don't people who want to, you're denigrate you for liking a version, that's silly.
Yeah, the edition was ridiculous.
Yeah, it's although there's guys at Gary Con who will argue with you and be like, I play D&D. There's only one version. It's the one that came in the wood grain box.
Yeah, we talked to Stefan. Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah, we've met Stefan a few times.
AD&D. No, Stefano's AD&D. So
no, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, no, Stefan's. I love Stefan.
I do too.
Fantastic, but he's like a big kid.
Yeah.
He has that enthusiasm of like he's still 12 or whatever it is. He's like, this is gonna be awesome, and and the way he DMs and all his voices, and it's fantastic. I totally lost my train of thought. I have no idea.
That's okay. I'll just do the show.
That's how we do it.
A lot of people don't realize this is your second appearance on Wisdom Check because you were on the Stefan Picorni episode because he was live with us at the bar at Gen Con, and you were there with him at one point. But there was so much noise we couldn't hear anything. It was a mess of an episode, but you were on there that time too with Stefan.
All right, it's my second appearance.
It's fantastic. But yeah, it's pretty fantastic. I think you were touching on something there I think is really important is that, if you do look at video games, you look at, modern pop culture, you look at just anything out there we're touching on a day-to-day basis, it has, your dad's thumbprint somewhere in it, and it's hard to find a creative that's out there making something that people love that isn't inspired by your dad. And, the people who worked with him and the things that have come from, those places. So it's an honor to, to be even able to kind of interact with that, I love it.
Yeah, I feel very blessed that I have this legacy, and it's an honor to be able to carry it forward. And believe me, this was not comfortable for many years.
I imagine.
When my father had died, people would come up to me and thank me. And I'm like, whoa, time out. Like, I'm his son. I did not create the game. And it made me very uncomfortable. However, very obvious, obvious. My father's no longer here, so they can't say that to him. So I'm the next best thing that they can do. And they get to communicate their thankfulness.
I think you're being a little modest on this because when I saw your name pop in the Discord, it's Melf. And we know of things like Melf's Acid Arrow. We know of things of these. So I would say that from what I understand of stories of how your father ran your games, there was a lot of this that came from the people who are the players, including you, your brother. A lot of other people have a very big thumbprint on what this game was in its early editions, and maybe those things that have still lingered on, if you will, through other editions going forward. So I think your thumbprint is on it.
And that's I hadn't really considered, and I just know it had made me feel a little awkward.
I can imagine.
They're giving thanks, but yeah, it's wonderful. And now I realize what I take it as. Oh, this is something they want to say to my father, who's no longer here, and I feel very happy to take to hear those words. And whether it's on Facebook or whatever the case may be, I always try to respond to anyone and thank them and say thank you for sharing your positive story about what Dungeons and Dragons meant to you, and it's very humbling to hear that. Because it's I'm carrying that. That's my responsibility now to do, and it's my pleasure. It's and I get to be the recipient of a lot of goodwill. So I appreciate that, and if anyone has ever messaged me and I didn't respond to you, it's probably because it's in that darn others folder. But
Yep. Know how that goes.
so like in a year later, I'll say sorry about that.
Now we have a couple questions in the chat. People are using the wisdom check question redemption here. So if you're new in the chat, if you do want to ask a question that we guarantee talk about here, so long as it's not raunchy or crazy, go ahead and use that functionality there. So the first one is Air Laser has asked, have you DM'd for your kids? How does playing with your kids and with D&D in particular help the relationship?
I've DM'd my daughters. My oldest daughter is 13 now. I think I gave her a character when she was like 6 or something like that. I was like, let's go. And she just wanted to get on the Dwarven Forge terrain. Because I know Stefan's cool. He's like, here's a bunch of Dwarven Forge stuff. So he sent me like, I don't know, probably thousands of dollars of Dwarven Forge. And Reaper Bones minis, and I just put them in there. And I'd be trying to tell some story to my daughter, and she was like, all right, I just want to, can I start killing stuff? So we would roll, we'd do a hack and slash. And I played with her, right? And her first character was Brendak, a ranger. And then I had 2 more daughters. And so I decided I needed to learn 5th edition a little better. It'd been out for a couple years ago, but I was like, man, I got to learn this 5th edition stuff, and I'm uncomfortable with it. So it's like, all right, girls, I've got D&D Beyond. I think it was Todd Kenrick was kind enough to hook me up with.
Nice.
Here's everything at D&D Beyond. Yeah, no, thank you, Todd. Todd's a great guy, by the way. If you don't know Todd,
he seems
awesome
like a
guy. Probably good interview.
I would love to talk to him.
No, he's good. He's great. I don't talk to him often enough. He did some wonderful interviews with me.
Yeah, we bump into him at cons from time to time.
Yeah, no, he's good, great. And so I just opened up D&D Beyond, and I said, all right, girls, I took off all the filters. I said, here, what do you want to do? So I ended up with Miriam, my oldest daughter, playing Tyrannos, a Minotaur Paladin. My daughter, Amira, who's a little bit more...
Again, so we'll give it a few seconds here, let the chat tell us if we are in fact alive, and if we do actually have an audience back here.
I see us. It's looking good on my end.
Okay. I don't know, apparently Dad came down the stairs and brought the gremlin with him, and the internet went out the second he hit the door frame. It was spontaneous and amazing there. All right, so I see people in the chat talking to us again, so it looks like we're back. Thanks for sticking by, guys. Sorry about that. So we were talking a bit about some...
we were talking about him running game for his daughters.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Yep.
So,
and speaking of gremlins, though, I just want to say that 2020 was full of whammies. 2020 was full of whammies for Gary Con, too. If you can believe it, when people were making reservations for the hotel, they had accent. Typically, I guess, is not real time. And in the past, they were able to keep it open for an extra hour and a half.
Okay.
They're like, okay, we're probably full, but we're going to keep it open for an hour and a half, and they would kind of stack up like an airline does, and then people would cancel out, and they would get there. This year, they left it open for half of an hour, and they had oversold 85 rooms, which was incredible. So basically, because it was growing. So that was whammy number 1, and that they waited until December to tell you about.
Oh no!
And I had to figure out how to relocate 80 people. Fortunately, a new hotel had opened up, so I had that taken care of, right? But Jesus, well, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
It was, oh my gosh, that was terrible. And then for tabletop events, great company. They JD Smith had started it, and they've since sold it to Board Game Geek. But good guy. He knew that Gary Con would have a big rush when we opened up event registration so people could get various games. So he had Amazon Web Service, so he had spun up extra servers. They're standing by. But what happened is he had added an additional program that basically overloaded his cache server, which I guess is how people identify what account they're logging into.
Yep.
So he had plenty of processing to handle the flow that was coming in, but people couldn't get into their account.
Yep.
And so that melted down, and people were like, oh my God, what's going on? We can't get stuff. He had all this power standing by to process all these people. I called him and said, it's not working. He lost his internet at home. He was working from home that day.
Wow.
So by the time he got everything back up and got it fixed and figured out what it was and shut off the additional stuff he had running, it had been an hour. We reopened sales, announced, hey, sales are back open. All the processors, they're like, nothing's happening. So they automatically powered down, and we got another rush, and it crushed it again.
Oh my God.
So that was 20. Oh my God. And it's like, I'm driving. It's like, I'm at work. I'm like trying to get stuff done. I'm like, oh, holy smokes. Because this obviously GaryCon is not, my real job is in the Army.
Yeah.
So this is just a sideline stuff that I'm doing. But anyway, so that was great. It was 2020 whammies and gremlins that totally made me think of that. It was just a rough year. And we got everything together. We fought through it, and we did all this great stuff. And then it shut us down less than 2 weeks, I think. I think we had 11 days to adjust fire. And I'm a big believer in virtual stuff, by the way. I wasn't into giving, a Discord or Zoom or any of that sort of stuff. I poo-pooed it all. I didn't do any online gaming. And so when COVID hit, I was lucky enough that a guy named Matt Everhart, who's known, goes by the handle Casey Rift, a good guy, and an Air Force officer of all things.
Okay.
Yeah, he is. He's an Air Force officer. So he had approached me previously and said, "Hey, could we do some virtual gaming at GaryCon?" And I said, "Sure, why not? Yeah, go for it. That's great." But I was not super into it, but I was like, "Well, yeah, if you're going to handle everything, why not? That's great."
Course, right?
Somebody's can't hurt anything, right?
He's in, Australia. Heath Farndon wants to play. Why not? Let's help Heath out. But we had 100 people signed up, maybe, and 20 events or whatever the case was.
Nice.
Well, and everything gets shut down. So in 11 days, it wasn't me. I was already focused. California was going nuts. I was already work was taking up 12, 14 hours a day. Everybody who helps me out, all the people who love GaryCon and have all that passion for gaming, took, and they went from 20 or whatever it was, a few events to 600 events and over 2,000 badges signed up for virtual GaryCon. And I think, I people have told me, and I don't want to seem arrogant or anything like that, but people have told me that GaryCon was responsible for showing people, other conventions, what was possible. Virtually.
Oh, yeah. No, I was going to say that. I was going to say, you guys really set the tone for what every other convention was going to try to do after that point. Because you guys were, fortunately or unfortunately, the first one out of the gate in this, what we think of now as like a brave new world, where like none of this stuff is possible. And it was like put together, like you said, in very short order. And everyone else looked at that and was like, we got more time than they did. We can make this thing work too. And it was, I watched some of the GaryCon episodes. I think I saw you on Pondsmiths. You were playing a game over there, I think, actually. And I watched part of
Cyberpunk.
So, yeah,
we're going to do another one of those
that night. So I was there that night. So I got to see some of it too. And it was great because I don't know if I could have made it to GaryCon this year, but I did get to experience some because it was online. So
episode 3 of Cyberpunk Red at Autumn Revel, which is a convention I'm doing in early October. So we'll talk about that later. But if you can believe it, this just goes to show you that no matter what you are someone is going to be upset or not appreciate it.
Sure.
When I announced, hey, GaryCon, we can't do physical GaryCon. It's virtual GaryCon. Badges to GaryCon, virtual GaryCon. If you paid for a badge, it's free. Just go and do it. And it's really about love of gaming and that sort of stuff. Man, some people were like, what is it when you do a chargeback? Is that what it's called on a credit card?
Yeah.
So they forcibly pull the money out there. Other people reported me to the Better Business Bureau and made me write legal papers back. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Yeah. So I had to go through all this stuff, and this is also while COVID-19 is raging, and I'm working like 14-hour days and 7 days a week. Like, Jesus Christ, man. So sorry if you did that. By the way, you are blacklisted and you're not coming to
Good.
I'm not even kidding.
We'll burn
I kept
them.
all the names.
He's got a list of names in a folder, the blacklist
yeah.
folder.
Hey, before I
all-
forget here, there was another redemption before we crashed that my computer is showing me over here on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and read it out. It's not a question, but Joker, he was one of our guests on from South America, and he was saying...
Chile.
Yeah. Hey, Luke, so when Mr. Gygax passed away, all the gaming stores in my... Oh, it just moved. Hold on a second. Somebody typed something. In my area held a mourning day, and we decided to do a local tabletop role-playing event on his day. So thank you, and thank you for your father. One love from South America.
Appreciate you recognizing and marking that day. That's great. Keep it going.
Yeah. So, like...
Me and my daughters. So somebody answered that question, and I failed to answer. So I owe you that. So yeah, I get D&D Beyond open, right? Mm-hmm. And I said, pick whatever you want. And I read through the classes, and I read the descriptions of the races and classes and stuff. And so my oldest daughter is Tyrannos, a Minotaur Paladin. My middle daughter is a little more girly. She is an Elven sorcerer with draconic, we kind of trace it like she's got draconic blood or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so she's a dragon princess. She said she wanted to be a dragon princess. So I think I let her transform into the form of a dragon. Doesn't really do much damage or whatever, but it's cool. She likes it. And then my youngest one wanted to be a bugbear because I guess bugbear sounds cool. Yep. But when I showed her a picture of it, she was like, oh my God, I don't want to look like that. It's like, no, but I said, you're a friendly bugbear. So she was a bugbear who was found as a baby. The elves had gone through and cleared up the evil, the bugbears. And there was a baby bugbear, but they kept this bugbear and raised it in the elven community. So she's Serena Elfriend, the bugbear ranger. And so they're all good. And they face lots of difficulties when they go into villages and stuff because a minotaur and a bugbear, they're monster classes, right? So they get picked on a lot and treated poorly, and people, make assumptions about them, but they're both goodly and that sort of stuff. So we have some fun with that, and we teach some life lessons that way. But they enjoy playing as much as I can make a 13, 9, and 7-year-old mesh together. That's not an easy. It's not an easy task. But when we play, they have a good time. Yeah, I have to crack the whip and say, no, we're going to play. And then they have a good time. But they're always go, I'd rather do this. I'd rather sit down and play.
Yeah. I just ran my first session with my 3 kids. They're 15, 9, and 4. And they, it was brutal. The 9-year-old, my daughter, she abandoned the 15-year-old in his fight against the big bad end guy to save herself. She didn't want to die, so she just ran away. Like it was chaos on the battlefield. They all over the place, but it was fun.
Yeah, I have 3 daughters. So when I do stuff like you're working in and you see there's like slain sheep that are bleeding on the side, and I'm trying to go on. They're like, oh my God, there's sheep that are dying. What's going on? Let's go take care of this. Can we save the sheep? I'm like, that was just flavor text. You're not. We don't care about the sheep. But like, okay, yes, you've saved the sheep. You've now resaved. Yeah, and that's so you just have to know your audience or whatever, and have to get some learning points in there.
Yeah. Dusty, you should tell them how you structure your game because I think it's pretty funny.
Oh well, so I have, like I said, I have a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 15-year-old. Now the 15-year-old, him and his friends are starting to play D&D on their own. So it's like he's kind of hitting that age where it's becoming a thing for him. He's writing his own dungeons. He's making maps. He's doing all this stuff now. So my 9-year-old, she kind of understands a little. She can do the math at least. The 4-year-old, no clue. So what I did was I gave them food. I gave them Cheetos for hit points, and I gave them 3 iced cookies for their death saves, should they ever hit the point they need them. Well, after watching one character die and me eating their cookies, because I'd take the cookie away from them when they fell and I'd eat it. And I told them that they got to keep whatever cookies and food they had left to snack on, or otherwise I was going to be eating it all as I killed them. So as I was killing them, I was taking their Cheetos and eating it in front of them. And so my daughter abandoned ship because she wanted to keep her cookies. And that's why she abandoned the 15-year-old in his plight to win the game. So that's how it went down. I'm assuming this edition? Yeah, rough. I was I watered it down a bit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, when they do a short rest, do you have like a bag of Cheetos? Do you have to replenish?
Yeah.
I mean, how does this work? So
Yeah, so there was a big thing of Cheetos over there, and whenever my son, who was playing 2 characters, he had to play the cleric would heal. He would grab the number of Cheetos and throw them on the plate of whatever character he healed, and then they'd move on.
I think this is very relatable. This could teach some lessons. So I like it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's never too early to get somebody gaming, right? Introduce people to it early. And I think it's something that's pretty amazing. Like, obviously that was true in your life. And I guess sort of fairly early myself, but it seems like more and more now, parents are introducing the game to their kids and, getting them involved. At least, obviously, the people we know are all doing it. Like our DM does it with his kids and everything else. So it's awesome to see, just seeing generations of gamers coming through in our Discord. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
we've lost a lot of the stigma around it.
Yeah.
I mean, you think of the 80s, the Satanic Panic. I mean, I'm sure you experienced some of that firsthand. Probably got stories of that time period, but there was a stigma then. You had to sit in basements, places where in the garage where no one would see you. Now it's like you can talk about it anywhere. It is not taboo like it was.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. You have people like, okay, so Joe Manganiello is married to Sofia Vergara, who is unmarried. I think we can agree. Like, I don't think there's much controversy in the area. And Joe's a jock. He's a big guy and that sort of stuff. It's kind of so many stars, so many prominent folks, creators played Dungeons and Dragons. It certainly has been destigmatized, and a good representation of people across the spectrum, male, female, etc. Played Dungeons and Dragons. Back in the day, it was less so. It was mostly a male hobby at that time. Certainly, women have been involved from the earliest days, but just not in as many numbers. And it's true. It was typically people who didn't fit in quite as well.
Yep.
Typically always accept the rule, but a lot of people who played were nerdy, and it was. You watch the old movies. I don't know if people have seen Revenge of the Nerds or something like that.
Yeah.
But that was kind of how society was a bit. Mm-hmm. And certainly during the Satanic Panic, it's laughable now. If you describe it to young people now, they will think you're probably pulling their leg. They won't think that's true. But it was. My father received death threats from people. Mm-hmm. There were cars would drive by our home and park across from it and be watching us. My mom would be quite nervous.
Wow.
My father took it seriously enough that he never drove. My father never drove a car.
Huh.
He never had a license, so he drove very infrequently and not on public streets. Mm-hmm. But he had a driver, so his driver was armed, and he was armed because he received death threats, and he was afraid for his life. My mom would watch us very closely when we were playing because she didn't want us to be kidnapped and killed by some wacko, some religious wacko. She chased some people down who were parked out in front of her house and drove off. She got in her car and she chased them down to their driveway and said, "What the heck?" And watching my kids play and that sort of stuff. So it was very real, and it seems ludicrous, just like Ozzy Osbourne is somehow tied to Satan worship.
Yeah.
I think we've all know enough of Ozzy Osbourne to realize that's not the case. Whatever other troubles he has, I don't think that's one of them.
Right.
But that was real. And people very much, some parents said, hey, for the health of our child, for their spiritual well-being, you cannot play Dungeons and Dragons, and kids would have to hide it. Now, that also served to make it dangerous, right?
Edgy,
and what do teenagers like more than danger, right? And edginess. So it helped promote Dungeons and Dragons to a certain extent, made it like, rock and roll and
absolutely.
that sort of stuff.
Yeah, Malice Conspiracy is saying when he was young, they sent him to therapy and demanded they throw out his D&D stuff as a kid. That's wow.
And just to show you how far we come, now they're using it in therapy.
Yeah.
From therapists telling people to throw away their books to using the books to actually help people with therapy now. So it's come full circle.
Well, it's interesting too because we talked to Joker not too long ago, and he was from South America, like we were saying, and they're talking about how tabletop role playing games in general are considered subversive there right now. So like that's an interesting kind of cultural element that's at play.
sure where you get that from. I know in prisons, some prisons, you're not allowed to role play.
Really?
Because they look, oh, you have dice, you're gambling.
Oh, okay.
You know, that's kind of, I think.
They just misunderstand it.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if it's not just a certain, like, hey, you're having way too much fun.
Right.
And it's
supposed to be punitive.
easy to escape. Because honestly, I mean, when you're role playing, do you care if you're sitting in a prison cell? No. You're out, you're doing adventures, right? I mean, you're out doing all sorts of cool shit. Yeah, but some prisons don't allow people to play Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, I mean, the Satanic Panic and people trying to shelter their kids from doing it just drove it underground and made it cool to do. And it helped him. I loved book burnings. I wonder if he said this. Perhaps it was actionary, or I'm just gonna roll with it. But when you hear about book burnings and people say, bring your D&D books and burn them, he's like, yes, and go out and buy the new ones and burn 2 of them.
There's a joke about it now, right?
Good for sale. So
when you see people like protest something these days, where they like burn like a player's jersey or something, right? Everyone had to go buy the jersey in order to burn it. So I mean, they couldn't burn the D&D books, so they hadn't already purchased your product. So
that's so silly.
It was good stuff. It was good stuff. So, but sensibilities have changed, a lot. The world is a very different place than 1981 or 2 or whatever it is. So, but yeah, Stranger Things, and that's a
great show
about the age group of those kids, in that show, and that is pretty cool. But yeah, there's of great adventures and storytellers who cut their teeth on Dungeons and Dragons, and it has made its way into our culture. George R. R. Martin is a gamer. Jon Favreau with The Mandalorian.
Oh yeah,
gamer. Peter Jackson, gamer. I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Let's see. We have another redemption here. This one is from Airlaser. She's admiring your library behind you there. I was wondering if it's actually the whole room is a library, or if it's just that one wall behind you.
Here, I live in a small home. I live in California, which is an expensive place to live. And I reside in Calabasas because the schools are very good, and I have 3 school-age daughters. But I am a humble soldier, so I do not make a lot of money. So I do not live in a palace and have that much square footage.
Yeah.
But this is a cool book collection. A lot of gaming stuff back
I was going to say, it looks pretty... I'm trying to zoom in real life here to see if I can spot stuff. But yeah, this is something I'm kind of curious about. Obviously, D&D is going to be close to you. But what other games do you play outside of Dungeons and Dragons?
I don't get nearly enough time to play games. So role-playing, outside of Dungeons and Dragons, I will play... I've been enough to play with Jim Ward and play on the Starship Warden at some Gary Cons. That's been a lot of fun.
Nice.
I played... that was fantastic. I played Cyberpunk with Mike Pondsmith. Also a lot of fun. I love the game Call of Cthulhu.
Yep.
That's just a joy, even though you die and it's horrible, but that's just a great game. And then otherwise, I'll play board games, in-card games. So Dungeon Mayhem is a very quick, beer and pretzels kind of game. Sushi Go, super fun for young. I recently played Shogun, or Samurai Swords, the old Milton Bradley game, with my daughters. Yeah, and then we watched the 1980 series adapted from James Clavell's novel.
Nice.
As well. So yeah, I watched that with my dad. So that was me really reliving some time with my dad, being able to pass that on to my kids.
Oh, for sure.
And do that. But yeah, I mean, for me, I don't have that much time. So when I play, it's probably D&D. If I'm playing, it's oftentimes a streaming game or with my daughters.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that seems to be the way things go as we get older. Time goes away, and gaming. And I'm telling you, I guess I'm just in that zone, right? I turned 50 this year, and so I guess I'm in that prime, that prime time or whatever. But boy, oh boy, I mean, when I was a younger guy, I didn't have much money. Right. I had lots of time. Now I have no time, and a little bit more money, but I'm not a baller or anything. But
But yeah, it's just terrible. I mean, I'm telling you, geez, it's like I feel bad. I hardly have time to, I still make time to do stuff with my kids. I'll jump in the pool, we'll go for a hike, and that sort of stuff. I try to prioritize those things. But yeah, there's always something on the plate. I never feel like I can accomplish all the things that I should be doing or required of me. The rat race. Right?
Yeah, the rat race for sure. I mean, I was looking up. It was, 31 years? I think I saw military service from you.
September 12th was my 31st year of military service.
That is incredible. Thank you for your service, obviously.
Thank you.
And
Appreciate it. Thank you for
being out there in California. Obviously, I don't know if you're part of the National Guard or anything like that, and dealing with the fire.
I am. I'm a full-time National Guardsman.
Nice.
So I've been in the National Guard in California since 2005. So essentially, it's the exact same thing as the federal military service that you think about, but our primary role is to assist the state. So we work for the governor.
Yeah. And
during emergencies, we provide civil support,
right?
Support to civil authority. So this year we have supported food banks, skilled nursing facilities, or sometimes referred to nursing homes. Provided security and protecting First Amendment rights during some civil disturbances. And then the fire season, we have over 3.3 million acres burning currently. And just my brigade alone, we sent out 400 soldiers out of 1,700 and some odd that we have doing that mission. Again, we're part-time soldiers, and we have, still have a couple hundred doing food missions and some soldiers doing skilled nursing facilities. So this has definitely been the busiest year for your citizen soldiers.
Oh, yes,
we're
absolutely.
Just, it's a cashier at the store, at the grocery store. It's the student. It's a school teacher. It's a lawyer. They're just people like you who have made that commitment to serve the community as well. And man, it has been a rough year. I am one of a very few, 8 or 9% of the force that is full time and is primarily there to make sure that the lights stay on and things happen from typical drill or training period, monthly training period to monthly training period. But this year it's just been, solid.
All
going on
books and all
the time.
Yeah,
to call this an extraordinary year is an understatement. I mean, it's been one thing after another all year long. So.
Yeah, we got a lot of people in the chat that are doing military service, it looks like, here as well. And it seems to be common amongst the hobby. A lot of military guys and gals that are drawn to it. I'm not sure. We've talked about it a little bit in the past, trying to figure out if there's a connection there, if there's something, or if it's just, people are people. I don't know. Do you have any insights into that, maybe, from your own perspective, I guess?
Sure. When I joined the Army in 1989, so D&D was still pretty. It wasn't too far that hump, and so a lot of people would go, I recognize that name, and at the time, of course, I was very concerned about being my own way, so I didn't really like that. So much. But honestly, I made a lot of friends that way, and most of my friends were gamers, and it was a great blessing. And I still am friends with some of those guys, and they still come to GaryCon, which is cool.
That's awesome.
But I would say there's a lot. When my father passed, I got phone calls because I was in recruiting command at the time in the National Guard, so my number was out there, and people were calling me. Of course, in recruiting, you always answer your phone. I wasn't a recruiter; I was a company commander of recruiters, but. Still, if somebody called me, I would answer. It's professional courtesy. And people would say, oh, hey, I didn't really think you were going to answer the call. I just wanted to say, it was a superior officer or something. And I was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know I've been a gamer for many years, and I'm so sorry that your father's passed. And so it's like all walks of life. Wow. I don't know if there's a special affinity for the military in gaming, but certainly like any walk of life, I think there's a representation that are gamers.
Yeah, it seems like some of the people in our chat, VTAC in particular, is saying for him, it's a sense of community and teamwork and definitely bonding. One of the PCs is a good friend and was in with me. He mentioned that it's probably the second most fulfilling bonding experience he's had. Wow. Yeah,
so much like going to war with, a close group and sharing, those with someone brings you closer, or if you were in a team sport and you went through a rigorous competition and you came out the other side, you're going to be closer. You're going to bond. So during gameplay development of your character, you go through hardships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, these are all make believe.
Right.
But when you refer to them, do you remember that time you were playing this character and we pretended to go into this dungeon or this cave? No, you say, yeah, man, do you remember that one time we went here and we did this and we killed this thing? So in your mind, it is pretty close to that experience as that shared hardship. And so therefore you get that bonding. And I think that's a really big part. And that's why gamers are so tight with one another and why those friendships last for so long is because you've been in the shit together and lived through it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And come out there to be able to talk about it.
We have a couple questions here from the chat that we needed to redeem. Joker asked, of all the modules your dad wrote, which one is your favorite and why?
The Lost Caverns of Sajkamp. That's definitely and by far my favorite. I play tested that as a mid-level MELF. A lot of it, I played probably half of it or so I played solo and the rest with some other folks. But basically I would just, every couple of nights I'd be able to go on an adventure with my dad or the parts that he created, test the room, test the creatures, and it was really cool.
Nice.
So it's a lot of work.
Did you know you were play testing at the time? Did he tell you, or was he just like, hey, we're going to go play? And then he would take whatever you did and go back, write notes about it later, come back, hey, we're going to try that again. Did he?
I figured it was from something he was writing, but I mean, the important part was I got to D&D with my dad, so that was cool.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So we got another question here from Malice. Strange question. Which college did you go to?
I went to 3 colleges. My first college I went to was University of Wisconsin-Madison prior to me joining the military. So I was there in 1988. Then I joined the military. I got out and I went to University of Wisconsin in Whitewater for 93, 94. And then I transferred to Beloit College, which is a private school in Beloit, Wisconsin, and graduated in 1996.
Wow. Yeah, I know how that goes a little bit. I've had a couple colleges under my belt. Yeah, it's really interesting just kind of how this whole hobby kind of goes. Everyone is taking in their grand adventure in life. They've got the adventures in the games, and it's all just kind of interwoven in there in some ways. And that's one of the things that's really stood out to me a lot when we do these games. I always find myself learning things about life from gaming that, you think you're just playing a game, just shooting the shit with your friends, eating some beer, eating some pretzels, drinking some beer, probably not the inverse of that. But sometimes little nuggets of something slip through. And I think those have been some pretty profound moments in my life. And it's pretty cool. Let's see.
Going back to the college question, I wanted to add that I ended up going to Beloit College simply because there was an organization called the Beloit Science Fiction and Fantasy Association, or BISFA, at the school, and they invited my father to come and speak to their group, and he did so because it was not too far away from Lake Geneva. And so he did that, and he said, oh, you should really go to that school or go hang out there. You'll probably make some friends there, so you should visit this group. And so I became friends with them, and then I transferred to the school. And so if there's any BISFAs out there, any Beloit Science Fiction and Fantasy Association people still out there,
it looks like Mouse is trying to confirm something here. His best friend claims that he went to Beloit and was claiming that they played with the Gygax there. So I think there was a little...
It may have. It could be true.
That's awesome.
And I was so disappointed in the BISFAs. I'm so like an old man. Back in my day, I wrote and I looked up who the president of the club was, and I said, hey, I run this convention called GaryCon. I'll give you free badges if you guys want to come. No response.
Oh wow.
Oh, completely. And I did that 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row, trying to help these kids out. I tell you, kids today.
That is ridiculous.
I don't even understand what was being given to him.
Nope, I can't imagine saying no to that. That's ridiculous.
Walk uphill both ways to
That's
go
right.
to my game. Just so you know, yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things that's really been blowing my mind about this is I've looked at enough conventions to know just how much goes into them. And, you know, even us just kind of building a community here on Twitch, you know, and on Discord and stuff, there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into it and finding ways to make a place accommodating, you know, to build that feeling of camaraderie amongst the people who are there and keep things moving. And I have a lot of respect for that. You know, like, I guess you were saying kind of like the first one was kind of just kind of impromptu, and then kind of as you kind of went, you learned. Like, how much reaching out to other conventions did you do to kind of, you know, figure out what you should be doing? Just none. Just figured it out.
Zero.
That's, wow.
You grew up at them, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you grew up
it.
at them, so you knew like kind of what you needed, right?
Yeah.
Wow, man, that is incredible.
Sure, it's a convention. It's really about just getting together. And I mean, just make sure to say thank you for coming, shake people's hands, try to give them value, do fun stuff. People had good suggestions. I would certainly listen. By no means, I didn't say I knew it all, but I didn't like go scout other conventions or anything like that. I didn't really particularly care about that. It was about what is GaryCon like, not what is another convention like. And this is not something that I am like responsible for. Like, I'm not this great mastermind or anything like that. I put effort into it. But boy, oh boy, there's just a lot of people who gave of themselves and volunteered and gave great suggestions and worked. And you know, Steve Chenault from Troll Lord Games published my event guide for free for 5 years.
Wow,
I paid nothing. He just said, "Hey, your dad was my friend. I love what you're doing here. Here you go." Chris Clark helps. You know, he'll help write a module or edit it or help free. Jolly Blackburn and David Kinzer showed up with a truck, you know, van full of free product and said, "Here you go." Frog God Games every year will donate product for the swag bag. Here you go.
That's awesome.
Jeff Easley.
Yeah,
I had no clue how much. I had no clue. I was a soldier. I had zero idea of what anything cost, right? So I said, "Hey, Jeff, how much to do some artwork for GaryCon, right?" He charged me $300.
What?
For an oil painting.
Oh,
yes,
my God.
For an Easley oil painting.
Wow.
Like, yeah. I had no idea that was a good deal. I was like, okay, yeah, $300, that's cool.
God.
Right? Right.
All right.
I've been the beneficiary of a lot of goodwill, but I was never trying to, I wasn't trying to hustle. I wasn't trying to make a buck. Whenever we'd make money, I would try to find a cool thing to do to help people out. So we made beer cups. People like Spotted Cow, New Glarus Brewery. My dad's, we're Swiss. So New Glarus Brewery was near and dear to my dad's heart. So we had happy hour and we would give free Spotted Cow. Buy the cup for $10. Free Spotted Cow during happy hours, and discounted Spotted Cow all the time. We want to thank GMs, so we would buy snacks for them. We'd have Snickers and chips and soda and water, and we would have volunteers go around and deliver this to them every game, so that they would have that. We have food service to the table, so that you can order food you can consume 24/7 if you want to, and get your food there. So there's all those things. It was really about gaming and having a good time, and the focus was, we didn't even have a vendor hall until GaryCon 4.
Wow.
And any vendor hall at all, it's like, it's about gaming. I don't, they're like, well, what if you forget your dice or something? I was like, okay. So I let one guy come and vend, and I realized he was jacking up his prices. I was like, oh, God damn it. Okay.
Yep.
I have to have
get that invisible hand in there.
Yeah. Right. Because I was like, altruistically, it was very much about an homage to my father and not a business for many, many years. Now it is definitely it is a business now. I want to keep that feel and I want to be respectful, but
do we have this audio?
It looks like it's digitized out just a touch there, so let's let the bandwidth catch up maybe just a touch, and we'll reset there with that sentence there, because I think I know where you were going, it just wasn't picking it up. So let's rewind it about maybe 10 seconds, I think, so we can pick up where we were. Okay, technology. Yeah. Well, while we're waiting to see if we can get that back going, it is something
test,
kind of
test.
There it is. Back.
Yeah, there it is.
There we go.
Technology is an interesting thing too, because we're talking about these online conventions, and in particular, I think Autumn Revel is something we should be talking about. And these are things that just wouldn't be possible, maybe 10, 20 years ago, just because what people typically had in their household, or virtual tabletops and things like that. So for the people in our chat right now that don't know what Autumn Revel is, maybe you can give us a little bit of a primer on it.
Autumn Revel is simply an idea I came up with. I was just some legends. So I do in July on my father's birthday a thing called Fathers and Legends, where it's directed toward newer gamers, 5th edition gamers, where I want to use this format to talk to the history of the game, show them something, and talk to it, and maybe have guests from that. This year, I added a virtual convention. Simply because we can't gather in person, I figured why not give people an opportunity to game and have this opportunity. Autumn Revel was a fantastic convention that TSR did when I was. There was I can't remember what it was called. There was Fantasy, Autumn Revel, and then one in the spring, and I don't remember what it was called. But those were cool little things that were held in Lake Geneva. Of course, I would go to them. Play between Gary Con and something that was missing, not doing very well in the virtual format, is how do we help? How do we take care of our vendors? A lot of these people are small business people. They're not corporations. A lot of their income comes, or they're seeding their income by going to conventions and talking to people and saying, oh, great, this is what I'm doing. Let me tell you about my setting. Let me tell you about my work, whatever it is. And people make impulse buys, or they take a card and they go, oh, that's pretty cool. I'm going to look up their website. And then they get introduced to it. It's a repeat customer. So that's a lot of their business. And this, they're not making a whole. They're living their dream through doing that. So I realized that at Gary Con, people were and offered virtual swag bag material. What did I do for them? Help anyone go to their website or do anything?
Right.
Sure, we had logos and all those things, but did I really drive traffic? Same thing at Founder, and people were extremely generous, and I can't thank them enough. I get so much support. I appreciate it. Did I do enough for them? And so I said, well, we do to help vendors out. I was thinking, okay, could we do like a Twitch channel where there's like somebody like Ron Popeil, doing the Ronco stuff and pitching stuff? But why would people tune into that Twitch, right? I don't know. Right. Okay, so maybe that's one way we could do things. We can do short commercials in between a streaming event, right? Okay, that'll help. That's good. A commercial is a time-tested thing. But how do I create that? How do I recreate that going and walking down the hall, and stopping in a booth?
Right.
And so brainstorming that, and I did some virtual reality, augmented reality type of stuff where they build a world. You can navigate through there. It was like $2,500.
Yeah, I imagine.
Right, I was like, okay, so like $50,000, you can do this. Yeah, great. I don't have that kind of money. That's not gonna happen.
Ooh, man.
Said, okay, well, how about just a Discord room? That's the virtual vending hall, and there's a Zoom number there, and we add We say, hey, from clock in the morning until 2 p.m. Central Time, which is how it's taking place.
Mm-hmm.
There's the booth, and be there.
Mm-hmm.
When you click the Zoom, you're just going to join. Just do like a Luke's Lounge where I just pop onto Facebook, throw a Zoom link up there, and say, come on and sit and talk to me. Let's have a beer, and let's we're about this tonight.
Gotcha.
And so 40 people show up, and we chat.
Wow.
And the idea here is you at the booth, they can ask about your products. You might feature a designer of a product, like something that you wanted to promote, offer a flash sale. Hey, since you're here, we're going to give you an extra 20% off when you use this code. So go and check out. That way, they talk to a designer just like you get to do at a real convention. Speaking to somebody, it's just you're looking at a website. And I'm hoping that pays dividends. I don't know. I haven't had a chance to test this. But that's one of the things I want to do at Autumn Revel is test this theory and see if that's a viable design for the future. Because these small companies, your troll lords, your frog gods,
right? Yeah, it's a major challenge.
They need it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They need it. Pace Setter Games, Goodman Games, whomever. All these guys that I know from GaryCon, right?
Right.
They're not big. These guys all have real jobs. They're doing this because they love it, and I want to do. And every single one of when I don't think they ever say no to me, right? So how can I not try to return that favor and say, hey, you know what? You've given me when I'm asking for return value to you. It's I don't want to be a lodestone around people's neck doing stuff. I want to try to keep the community going. I want to keep it strong. I want to find ways to survive in this environment.
Yeah, it's a major challenge. Now, we're going to have this on podcast format in the future. So even though we had a lot of information linked in our chat, courtesy of Mark CMG, I want to make sure that people know about the dates here. So if you're not too far in the future, it looks like the dates are October 9th through October 12th, if that information is correct there. And so definitely check that out.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And this is something, obviously, my dad. My dad's an artist that goes to a lot of these conventions and sells at said booths. And, he and I have sat around a lot trying to figure out, where you can translate that experience onto online. And, Twitch is definitely a place to do it, but it's a place to reach a different audience. And I'm really curious to see how much overlap there is between convention goers and people that frequent, the medium of Twitch or YouTube or some of these other places that kind of go around there. And I do think you've nailed it, because I think that's that personal interaction that's the important component to the vendor, client experience. Because anyone can go to a website, and there's no real pull to just look at a website, right? There's no, you might love a product, but you don't really have a connection to it until you're sitting there talking to the person across the way. And I think this is an interesting strategy you got going on there. So, if I'm understanding it correctly, you're talking about opening up a Zoom call, having a large group of people, one primary speaker, and then are you just unmuting one person to talk at a time? Is it kind of a free-for-all thing?
I do. So basically, it's probably or maybe it was I was just tired. 6 days a week, 12, 14 hours. And at the end of the day, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I just wanted to have beer, and I was like, I want to talk to somebody. I haven't done. So I just got on Zoom. I just posted a Zoom link on Facebook and said, hey, I'm going to be on an hour. Come talk to me. And just whoever came in or whatever, we just talked. And it said, hey, what do let's say let's talk whatever the topic was, and we'll just go. And so I see it as something like that, just like you're walking by a booth and hey, what's your new stuff? You probably want to, for some of that, suggest you'd probably want to add, hey, during this half hour or 15 minutes out of an hour, we're going to have a particular person here,
Mm-hmm.
And so those people pop in to hear that person talk about their creation, and then hopefully, and then the next have a different person and hope to appeal to an audience and that sort of thing. And but you might just get people dropping, right? Because it's in the virtual vendor hall, and it's like, oh, I'm between games, and that's why I picked a weird time like 11 to 3, because it's going to cross over a couple. It's going to cross over a couple game times, right?
Right. Yeah,
and streaming times and all that. So I don't want to just pick, 4 hours is a long time. It would be nice maybe to have 2 hours here, 2 hours there, but it's like, okay, it needs to probably be one of the vendors, and it should break between scheduled gaming so that you can, even if I was planning on a game, I would have an hour at least to go visit the vendor hall.
Yeah, for sure.
Visit the vendor hall, support these people if you can. These are the guys, these are the people who contribute to the virtual swag that you're partaking. And the other to great people who help with the efforts that I do in convention organizing. Give me something for swag bag, and then give me a discount thing related to it, right? So the first taste is free, you've gotten the hook in, right? Then give me a discount and spend some money to help support you, because I think that's important. If you can do that, and then, okay, this is really interesting stuff. I want to continue. I want to hear more. I'm gonna hear a discussion from your designer, and I feel like I have some involvement. I'm a stakeholder in this, and I've invested a little bit of my own money. I've heard the person describe it. I've become intrigued, and that's how you build this base. It's going to be a foundation, and hopefully continue on years supporting your work and your company.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be really appreciative of this. And I really hope there's a lot of success out there for people. Because we've talked about, ways that something can be organized. And, some of the things we thought of were, like, oh, maybe you have a channel set up like a TV station, then you have people, swap in for, like, this is my segment, my show. There's just so much to coordinate with that. That's where, just
like
us
the home
doing our
shopping network on Twitch, basically. I mean, you're looking at setting something up like that.
Yeah, is what I refer to it as. But why are you going to come and watch that channel?
Right, yeah.
Unless you're home. If you're a gamer, are you necessarily going to go there? Sure, there could be fire sales, there could be something, but I got to think of a hook for what that is. And so if you could just dial into the to go to, and then if that vendor was proactive and said, I'm going to have this person at these, you might help drive the traffic. I mean, it's that direct connection.
Absolutely.
Where they're just they're engaging you like booth, and that would work. And we're doing streaming, and so there'll be an hour between each game, and people who are sponsored want to do a featured spot, like a 20-minute interview. I mean, I did that with Founders. Pretty neat. I got
that's awesome.
Ben Looms, who does Sirenscape. I don't know if you heard of Sirenscape, but they make these amazing, like, custom, all these sound effects. And I had Sirenscape before, and I got to interview Ben, and he's a great dude.
Nice.
And I was like, wow, that's really cool what you're doing, and just hear a story. So I get to learn and grow from that as well. So maybe be another person. So I get lots of really cool bennies to being Gary Gygax and stuff. So Hero Forge was one of the guys who has Wonders and Legends, and a great guy named Fox. I met through their new colored mini. So I don't know if you guys know Hero Forge at all.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Codename Entertainment, who do Idle Champions, and an adventure based around where they made an Idle Champion Hero Forge, how I wanted it to look. But it was just, it didn't have color to it. It was mini, right? How they're doing these colored mini.
Oh, that looks nice.
Pretty dope. And so he sent me some.
That's so cool.
That was nice of him. So yeah. So thank you, Fox, and thank you, Forge.
Man, that's fantastic. Let's see, to catch up on the chat here real quick again. Let's see. I do realize we are over our time that we normally allot here by about 20 minutes, so I don't want to, keep you too late if you need to go. But I'm loving having you here to chat with. So if you need to curtail it, let us know, and we'll just.
Says we got one from Mark. Seems he didn't redeem it, but it says ask Luke about John Popson's effing cool minis.
Mark Clover, aka Mark C, creative mountain in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, is a good guy, and he's been to GaryCon since the very earliest of days. So good man. Hi, Mark. Thank you for being here and listening. And effing cool miniatures is by John Popson, a very talented. He created the Thunderfrost Dragon for me, which was super amazing sculpt. This guy gives me like family pricing on all his work. Bottom basement, top shelf. Effing cool, EFIN cool, COOL. Minis, amazing stuff. Hilarious, good sense. Good dude. So you should definitely support him. And even made for GaryCon, I did the Horde, which featured a Thunder Dragon, as well as the Trouble at Loch Geneva, which used the map of the Grand Geneva, which is the hotel where we have GaryCon, and made it into like a stronghold that was overrun by this dragon, which I made, which is a cross between a white and a blue. Anyway, it's neat. So check it out. Go to GaryCon.com. Look at the merchandise there. I think we might have a couple of those still left in print that you could purchase. We made an old school heavy metal again, and they were priced at $99, but it was like a pound of pewter. It was it was a big dragon, and so I'm not making a mint on that even at $99.
No, but materials are expensive.
Like a lot of, very, but it was cool. It was super dope. Just a fantastic. John Popson, great dude, and hopefully the future.
Nice. Now I just dropped the links again there, so if you missed that earlier in the conversation, all the links out there for both GaryCon and Autumn Revel, and something else we haven't touched on just yet, but you've been working on some writing, right? So you've done a little bit of that, and something coming out soon, I heard.
Time has been so hard with everything that's going on. It's been tough. I write a module every year for GaryCon, and the first one I wrote, I'd just gotten back from my last tour to Iraq, and that was 10 years ago now.
Wow.
But playing in my mind, I know it's time flies. It was playing in my mind how environmental challenges aren't, in D&D, like, it's hot, it's cold or whatever. Yeah, right. Right. I'm like, dude, degrees, and you're wearing body armor. You're not just nonchalantly that. So I wanted to make people feel. And so I wanted to create an adventure, and I was like, what am I going to do? What's my adventure? And so instead of starting at a smaller scale and working out, I said, well, let me create a world, right? So I came up with the idea of lands, which was this post kind of elliptic, environment, middle, a little bit of middle flavor in there, and environmental challenges and strange creatures, and the sense of wonderment about your environment. So sure, I could just reskin creatures, but I wanted people to not know what skills, what their defenses were, their vulnerabilities were when they looked at something. And so I created this world of Okarim in the Blighted Lands, and it's a lot of fun. And run it. And I create a tournament module every year for GaryCon, and many of them have been based in World of Okarim. Fleshing it out into like a campaign, and it's going to take a lot of time to get it out there. But I really intriguing and would be well received. I just honestly have the bandwidth right now to get it out there. If I had trusted co-writers who I could talk to and trust to work on it, I would do that. Unfortunately, the guys I know all have their own stuff going on, and God bless them for that. I'm happy they do. Like I mentioned, Jay Lanian, I think earlier with the Trouble at Loch Geneva and the Cross Dragon adventure we wrote. I was like, wow, I worked with him, and he did a lot of the writing. I was like, this is perfect. You work with me, and he's like, sorry, dude, I have like Northwood Adventures, my own company, and Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea, which is a fantastic game. And I know exactly why my father picked him to be his, lead on the Castle Zagging stuff. Jeff's very talented, great guy, and I was honored to work alongside him on this one. Totally respect his own thing going, and as he should. That's his thing to carry forward. But yeah, if I can find someone along those lines that they have that much trust in and has that much talent, it's going to take me a while to get to it.
Right on.
So they did it just like you were talking about with the vendors, right? They gave you the first one kind of for free, and they're like, no, I got this other thing going on, and if you get in line with you, we'll come back around to you, and you can get the rest of it,
Yeah, and what I decided I'm going to do is I've talked to Chris Clark, who is another guy who worked with my dad. Great dude, super talented. This guy does not get enough credit, by the way. So Christopher Clark, he does Inner City Games, his company. He's great. He really is a very talented adventure writer, and he's helped me out on numerous adventures and numerous things. Has helped to take the adventure put in print, and of course there's PDF versions out there, but I just need to edit them, convert them, and put them out there, drive through or whatever. So I've meant to do that, meant to do it, and I just haven't got. Like I said, the gaming stuff is really all secondary to me. I have a primary job, a family, and then Gary Con, and then side stuff. So I am really proud of the work that I've done, but an idea that was really just an out of love. But the adventures are fun. People have played them, have said, hey, you should expand these and do it. And someday, I was planning on retiring in October. However, the Army promoted stick around to take advantage and retire at that higher.
I feel like we missed quite a bit of that sentence there, unfortunately.
I think your mic's cutting in and out a little.
Can't hear you.
Is that helpful?
There you go.
Yeah.
Now I can hear you.
Oh,
Might just be a distance thing. I don't know.
sorry. Yeah, I'll that's fine if it works. To say the Army tricked me by promoting me. I'm going to retire in October, but they promoted me just last year, and so part of the system is you have to do 3 years at that rank to retire fully at higher ranks.
Congratulations.
Tricked me to stick around for a couple more years. Yeah.
So you suggesting they went down the list and found all the guys that were going to retire this year in 2020. They're like, let's promote them all. We need them for a couple more years. Look how crazy the world's getting. Like,
that's a possibility.
Man, that's wild.
So with the work you have going on with like Gary Con, for instance, now none of us have crystal balls. We don't know how all this is going to end. But are you still looking at this point for next March being an in-person Gary Con? Are you thinking that's still the route that things will be looking at for 2021?
Oh, there you go. I think we can do that. My intent is to have Gary Con an ethereal Gary Con, so we'll do both. Sure. The in-person will be smaller. It'll be half size. We're going to consume the same amount of floor space. We're going to have less people at each table. We're going to space the tables further apart. We're going to require masks. We're going to encourage people to wipe down their area with provided cleaning solutions and that sort of thing to help. We need to have designated areas for eating food. We won't be able to do things like the tableside service and those sorts of things, because
Sure.
eating and taking your around other people is not, it's not conducive to fighting the spread of COVID. So it'll be a different experience, but we want to have a physical convention because I think it's really important for people to gather. And one thing I do want to stress though is if you are not fully committed to wearing a mask, taking preventative measures, I would Gary Con in person, so virtually. I absolutely expect everyone to operate to fully adhere to those rules, and if not, we would be forced to, for the good of everyone, to ask you to leave and not. And if you have risks, I mean, if you love Gary Con, but you're a higher risk category, I would also just respectfully ask that you do not come to this. That you wait till another year and come. Your health and your safety is more important to me. I'll go with you if I get to see you again, right? To come there and get sick and then have that much higher risk of not making it to another Gary Con. So
absolutely,
it's just kind of some common sense things that we need to do, but they're serious. I know somebody who has gotten COVID-19. Thank goodness I'm someone who's died from COVID-19, but it does happen. I don't want people to overreact or be, but I do want prudent, cautionary measures and be honest with themselves. And if there's risk, there's always residual risk.
Right.
I cannot come to Gary Con that you will not get sick. Right. So you have to be willing to accept that amount of risk. But please do not do so if you are at an elevated risk level. There's always going to be another year, and we want to see you there.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Well spoken. Yeah. It's it's surprising to me how many people are out there risking themselves and other people at this point, and not to get political, but it just feels like we could have been out of this a while ago if we had just done the right things at the right time and made the right sacrifices when we needed to. And so hopefully people pay attention to that now.
It's tough. I get to see it all firsthand. I work in the medical field. I handle the virus every day. So I probably won't be coming to Gary Con for the sake of all of you. But I was joke I'm like the most dangerous person everyone knows right now because I literally handle the virus every day. So if you play with fire, you're probably going to get burned at some point. But so it's one of those things where I've seen people suffer from it. I've seen people die from it, and it's real. So just know it can happen to you. It won't necessarily happen to you, but just take those precautions. And I'm glad to hear that those are the kinds of things that you and others who are looking at your 2021, because probably not even at late 2020 this year, are we probably going to see actual conventions. I can't imagine.
No
but
way.
Those of you who are early in line next year for 2021, have the time now and the experience of what you went through this year to be able to say, like, here's what we need to do. Here's what our state's allowing. This is where we feel comfortable, and this is what we're going to try to do to bring an experience that we unfortunately were all kind of robbed of this year to a degree. So I'm glad to hear that's the approach people are taking.
Yeah.
A little smaller, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking 1,500 people as a max. If it's 800 people, because that's how they're coming and want to accept the risks and all that sort of stuff, that's perfectly fine. I'm to come unless you feel you want to be there and rules. Then I think you can, as long as you're willing to do that, great. If you have any doubt, it's okay. We'll see you in another year, and that's perfectly fine. There's no issue. Come virtually. Virtually is great.
Right.
You're still doing your thing. You're still meeting people. Plenty of guests are going to come virtually, and that makes me happy.
Oh yeah,
guys like Tim Cass. Tim Cass.
Yeah.
Older guy, survivor, great dude. He's kind of like an uncle to me. I'm happy and virtually. Some other folks are a bit more adamant about coming in person. Maybe I can convince them to go virtual if I think it's in their best interest, because I want to see them at Gary Con.
Right.
Good stuff. Yeah.
14, 15, 16.
Right. There will eventually be a point this is all just a bad memory.
Yeah.
And then I think with the Spanish flu, I think everyone had to wear masks for like 2 years. It was roughly about what it took for the Spanish flu when that came around last time. So just as an expectation, a couple of years of having to deal with something like this, and then hopefully we can be back to operating as fully normal and we'll have those concerns no more.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about your convention is that it's by nature already meant to be kind of intimate and small, so like you're not losing the experience by having to cut down the number of people coming. Unlike some of these like super large
about it.
Yeah, it might be pretty nice actually. So that's pretty cool.
And in fact, Autumn Revel here is purely an ethereal gaming experience, which means we're not coming in person. But my intent is I would like to have a small and old school play focus. Although again, I'm never going to say if you want to come and play 5th edition or 5th edition, hell, whatever you want to play. I'm not going to tell you. But just a few hundred people, and maybe an old location, just intimate and more reminiscent of those things that I remember. That'd be great, and be able to do that next.
Well,
probably in September, a little bit earlier. There's another convention. Oh, good.
No, sorry. It paused. I thought you had finished your sentence. I was going to make a comment. Go ahead and finish what you were saying.
In Wisconsin, in Madison, called the Game Con.
It's a good con.
Who and does all sorts of stuff in the gaming industry. He's a great collector. He came to the GaryCon 3, or maybe it was GaryCon 4, and he asked me, he's like, hey, I want to start a convention. I want to do it in Madison, Wisconsin. I'm just having trouble getting some of these guests to return my email. I was like, yeah, it Gary was like, 4 of us running it, right? So I was like crazy. I think I'd stop to get a bite to eat at the bar. And he came up and talked to me. And I was like, okay, no problem. I was waiting for my food. I just took him around and introduced him to like 6 of the guests in the place and said, that's my friend Alex, give him your email. And then his convention is fantastic. He's a wonderful. Yes, your game holes is good stuff, and his team have built a wonderful convention, and I think they're going to move it a little bit earlier. They typically have it in November. I think they're going to back it off 2 or 3 weeks into October because the weather is so unpredictable in Wisconsin in November. And Autumn Revel, even if I do a very small convention, just out of respect and we'll cooperate. This is not a competition. We're friends that bring joy to people and organize these conventions. I will push it back into September a little bit so that I'm getting in their area.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was going to say Gamehole Con, it was the first year I went to it, and this year was surprise snow, I think, that first day. It was a massive snowstorm. It was a crazy, freaking one out of nowhere. But yeah, that's a great con. If you guys haven't been to that, definitely go check that one out. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, that's really nice, because that's one thing we've kind of run into here as well on Twitch. You start making a lot of friendships with other channels, and there's only certain times that work for certain people to broadcast, and you're trying to play the can we make space for everyone that needs space and still get our stuff out there, and it's an important thing for community building.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that I just GM'd some games for Gen Con online when they did the virtual con. So I just GM'd some stuff for it. We did it in Discord. We had players come in. We got to sit down with them, meet them, and everything else. There's still a lot of value even to the virtual half of it. So people who got to make a decision where they want to go or not, you're still going to get the small group feel. You're just going to be maybe on your computer doing it, but we had cameras, we were all seeing each other. We're talking to each other. We're playing this game together. It's all still able to be done. Everything that you're getting there, except, maybe the actual smells and everything else that comes along with the con sometimes. But, you get to cut out maybe some of the bad part there too, right? So it's not so bad all the time. So, but it was fun. We got to have a good time playing. And I think that if you want those things to be out there for conventions, I think there's plenty of people out there who will help make those things happen even in your communities already. just here on Twitch and other places. So
50% of the experience by doing it virtually. You really get almost all of it. And I said I was not a believer in virtual tabletop at all. I'm still kind of a Luddite. I don't know how to use roll d20 or board or fantasy grounds. I kind of grumble about Discord, but I can use Zoom or Google Meet or whatever. Those are very basic platforms, and I just have players roll their dice. But it's fun. It's fun. It's easy. It's expanded my gaming experience. It's allowing us to game across the globe, no matter across the nation, across the globe, and it's just going. And it was very important. I mean, I used Zoom to reach out to do Luke's Lounge simply because I missed people.
Yeah.
Well, talk to people. I couldn't pop into a bar. I couldn't go to a restaurant. I couldn't do that sort of stuff. So would I just relax and shoot the breeze with somebody? It's not work. Work is kind of a different. So I just wanted to people, and it was nice. Probably past due on doing another Luke's Lounge. And if I ever can do it regularly, start a Twitch.
You should
go and do stuff. These people have told me I need to run my Blighted Land stuff and campaign on. So I need to do the Luke's Lounge stuff and have guests on and an interview and do these sorts of things. Just give me some more time. I need
it's all about 6 hours right?
a day. We can do it.
Yeah.
It is. It really is. And I'm blessed with opportunities. So I may about stuff or whatever, but it's really just a blessing of opportunities and having so many people being interested in what the heck I have to say or do. That's I fact that people care to listen to what I have to say. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, us as well. I mean, it was a big shock to us that anyone wanted to watch. When we got started, just a bunch of us just yapping and just saying like, "Oh, somebody will watch this, maybe." And now we got people coming in every week, every day of the week, and it's beautiful. I love our community, and I love that we have the opportunity to do these sorts of things. Because other people have built communities that we're a part of as well. And
we just got raided by Quest and Chaos.
Speaking of a community,
Quest and Chaos.
26 of you all just showed up with us.
26 of them just showing up. We're talking here with Luke Gygax. We were just discussing about virtual cons and hopefully being able to have a physical con in some form, for Gary Con coming up in March. So that's what you're walking into here. As we were just holding the end of that discussion down, and I was just about to tell you too. Like if you're for your Blighted Lands, like if you need people to run that stuff on stream, like look no further. We will gladly put some of that out there for you if you need it done.
Yeah, for sure. They're tournament modules, so it's not it's not big open sandboxy and that sort of stuff. But I wrote them. They're fairly disconnected in the way that I wrote them because I really wrote them convention to convention. However, I figured to kind of tie them together and that sort of thing. But yeah, that with you once I get them edited, and put into. They're really in first edition what I wrote for. So first edition compatible. I can shoot them to you. You guys are. I'd love to have people play them. I mean, honestly, I printed like 100 of these modules and in hard copy and sold them at Con, and that's it. But I think they're decent. I mean, I hope so, right? I mean, when you create something, is it good? I hope it's good. But I think they're okay. I've gotten mostly positive feedback. I'm sure, no matter what, somebody's going to hate it.
There's always somebody out there. Yeah.
Always somebody. There's haters everywhere.
They'll be like, oh, who's this guy doesn't know what he's doing, and that's fine. I try sensitive.
We recently just did a tournament module for DCC on stream with 4 other channels. We had a tournament amongst the 4 different channels doing the same one. So I got a little experience with tournament modules. So yeah, I rebuilt the entire map of it in Roll20. It took me forever, but I got it done.
You could ask me about that. Like, hey, would you like your It might have been Boffin.
Oh, yeah.
Buffering, yes. Yeah, we know buffering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take these and have roll d20 maps, basically built to the d20 compatible? Yeah, of course I would. That'd be fantastic. 50 people having, well, maybe there'd be 250 people who played it, and that'd be really cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's crazy how internet, like, the community is. Like, it's, you start dropping names, and it's like, oh, yeah, I know that guy. Okay, yeah, we hang out with that person, too. It's like, that was the big thing I noticed when I went to these kind of smaller conventions is, like, after I started helping Dad out at the booth, like, I started recognizing everyone. Like, I'm in the dealer hall all the time, so I'm never actually at a table getting to play. But, like, I was like, oh, yeah, it's so-and-so. Okay, yeah, that's that vendor. Oh, yeah, we're always at the shows together. Okay, that one always, like, diagonally to the right from me for some reason at every show. Like, cool, let's go out to dinner after this, And it's happening now with the Twitch stuff, too. And, like, that actually kind of blows my mind. But
yeah,
a lot of people
the thing is, people in the community are willing to do the work. Like, they're willing to do the work, like, all but for free, even almost. Like, they're like, hey, just give me some, we'll just run this and put it out there and just have a blast doing it, and you will make sure it's credited to you and that people realize it's yours, and then they can find it from you. It's out there and people see it.
From that, it's always just a fear of mine is that, I don't want to take advantage of people. I want to make sure that they're, they're recognized, and they, because I'm just a firm believer in that. Maybe it's just much that if someone is doing for you, you pass that credit on to them,
Exactly.
And they're going to continue to work and do the job, Whereas if you fuck something up, then you got to take responsibility.
Right? Yeah, that's an important part. A lot of people skip on that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's be reliable. It's
People
always
appreciate that.
Absolutely, and reach out and just always be available to somebody when you can do something like that. That's been like the best thing I would say from running this show is that you meet people and you can network. One person to another, and like they have a need or they want a group or something. They're making a new product or something, and you could just link them together, and you just get to watch to see what happens as a result of that. I love that.
Physically, people, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been some great collaborations and tons of friendships that have grown out of that. And that, I said it's just a do Gary Con. It is always that guy who's griping about. That's one of my favorite gripes. A little bit of a. So we used to sell an early bird badge that was a little bit cheaper, and it came with a soda cup or a soda cup. Mm-hmm. So you could get $1 soda refills the whole convention long.
Oh, nice.
Who's going to complain about that? 22-ounce soda for $1, right? That's gamer heaven. That's good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This guy was like, oh, Gary, they keep screwing me out of stuff. And I was like, what? It's like every year I buy an early bird badge and they give me this useless that I can't. And I'm like, what? Like, well, what do you mean you can't use it? He's like, you never have a soda that I need. You're just cheating me and you can't pay for this thing. I'm like, are you kidding me? You're getting the badge for like $10 cheaper than regular. He's like, I need a non-caffeinated diet non-cola.
Oh my god!
And you never.
He was mad about the variety of cola options for the free
I
drink.
figured out. I was like, okay. I was like non-cola diet. That so he needed
7-Up.
a diet Sierra.
Yeah.
It was the first year at the Grand Geneva, and I said, "Can you get diet Sierra Mist and hold it for this guy?" Like, yeah, we'll do it for you. So they got it.
Wow.
And so I messaged him back and I said, just for you, get a special there for you, so this will not be a problem. It's the first time you brought it to my attention, so
wow,
to correct it.
That's amazing.
That is fantastic.
And this is a terrible. This is Gary Con 8 when everything was like there was all so yeah. It's crazy, but.
You try to be accommodating when you can. Some people it's never going to be enough, but it's wonderful to be able to make the effort and to kind of get from there. Now we are
we're pushing near the end of our
here.
time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I want to say thank you so very much for joining us tonight. Again, carving out the time, especially as busy as you've been, it's a pretty big deal to us, and I want to make sure thank you so very much for your time.
Being here, I had a lot of fun, and it is a little late, so probably time to cut it off. You guys are on the East Coast, or
I'm East Coast,
Central.
he's Central, so it's clearing in on 2 a.m. over here. Yeah,
it's coming up on 11 o'clock in California. Time to sign off, but real pleasure. I'm glad we were able to and make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
for you guys in chat, once again, GaryCon.com, go check that out. Also, you can go to check out Autumn Revel. The link is in the chat right now. For those of you who are listening to this, hopefully it's the right link here. I'll put it in the description, so if you look below the videos, you'll get all those there. Make sure you go check it out. That's going to be a pretty big deal. Need more of these things out there for us gaming geeks to enjoy. And Dustin, do we have anything else to say, or?
I got a couple things that I'm going to say here real quick. I did some booking today for future episodes of the Wisdom Check. Next week, we're back here with Chuck from the Defenders of Kobold.
Nice.
If you're familiar with them, Chuck's back next week. He holds the title of being the most viewed episode of Wisdom Check, and he looks to try to beat his old record. I don't know if he'll do it or not, but he's intent that he's going to try to hold that title for a little longer. Coming up next month, we're going to have a real good October, because I've got Daniel D. Fox on the 19th for Project 7076. He's one of the writers for Zweihander over at Andrew McNeil. He's going to be here to talk about his new Kickstarter project, Project 1776. And the week after that, on the 26th, we got Jeff Leeson, who I was introduced to from Mark Clover, and he has got a museum up there, I guess, in Lake Geneva's original TSR building.
Oh, nice.
I believe that he's converting into a museum, and he's going to have a lot of information on it, hopefully by then. So those are some of the future episodes of Wisdom Check we got coming up. So if you're enjoying our content, stick around, come back on those weeks and see us. We're going to have some other people here in the meantime. This week, tomorrow, Cameron will be back for Bardic Knowledge, I believe, doing some music tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Wednesday, 10 p.m. here at the channel. These are all Central Time. I'll be back for GM prep for my Zweihander game. Thursday, we'll be doing video games, 10 p.m., and that'll take us into the weekend, where on Sunday, my Zweihander game, 5 p.m. Central Time here at the channel. Chapter 7, all the King's Horses, all the King's Men. And we'll see whether or not they blow up the entire world before the end of 7, before the end of Game 7. So that's our quick run over the week, because I know we're late, so I'm chopping through it as quick as I can here.
Awesome.
All the other stuff is in the panels. And again, thank you, Luke, for being here with us. We do appreciate you taking time. We know you have very long days right now already, fighting fires and everything else out there in California. So stay safe, and thanks for being here.
Yeah. Now let's talk about paying it forward. We got raided. Let's raid somebody else if anyone's still running it this late.
Oh yeah, we're gonna go over and we're gonna say hi to Scabby Rooster here tonight.
Awesome. I'm gonna switch us over to the outro screen. So stick around while we load the bus, and we'll see you on the other side.
Yep. Thank you, Quest and Chaos, for the raid.
Adios.